Dragon Tamer. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 201 Future Plans. Plaza Blueprint. 10 meters up and down, or 20 meters horizontally, can be utilized. Boss, what population do you hope this shelter can accommodate? Yinzin Meng asked. 10 meters above ground, 10 meters underground, and nearly 200,000 square meters horizontally. It's not a small building space, but the specific design depends on the population it will accommodate. If it's just within the wall of ashes, I hope it can accommodate at least 5,000 people, and it shouldn't be overcrowded. Facilities like a shopping mall, a training ground, 2 small processing plants, and a medium-sized warehouse capable of storing hundreds of tons of supplies must all be available. Liu Ming laid out all his requirements in one breath, then waited patiently for the response from the supposedly renowned architect before him. As for the reason for only increasing the capacity from 3,000 to 2,000, it was based on practical considerations. There aren't many new high-rise buildings in the apocalypse safe zone, not because they lack the capacity to build taller ones, but primarily to prevent sudden attacks from flying monsters. Tall buildings are more vulnerable to attacks from aerial monsters, making defense more difficult. If the number of residents were to be increased based on this, the entire shelter would become completely overcrowded. Therefore, his plan was to expand the shelter's central core area, extending from the train station square, and construct a second outer wall of ash. Once the number of residents reached 5,000, he would then relocate the remaining residents to secondary areas outside the central area enclosed by the ash wall. Yinzin Meng breathed a sigh of relief when he heard Liu Ming's projected total capacity was only 5,000. Increasing capacity by just 2,000 was no small feat for him. The design wouldn't even take 3 days. However, actual construction would likely face considerable obstacles, given the lack of modern large-scale equipment and various types of construction vehicles. But upon hearing the second half of Liu Ming's request, Yinzin Meng's relaxed expression suddenly fell. Training grounds, warehouses, even processing plants, and shopping malls would all take up space. Where would the entire train station contain all that? He felt a slight ache in his stomach, then fell into deep thought. How could he perfectly fulfill Liu Ming's requirements and design and build a new shelter that would satisfy him? This preoccupied his mind. Nearly 30 minutes passed before Yinzin Meng emerged from his reverie. He glanced at Liu Ming, noticing no trace of impatience from the prolonged wait. Reassured, he began to unpack the idea he had recently conjured. Boss, look at the layout of this plaza. It's arranged in a terraced pattern. The entire train station square can be divided into 3 smaller plazas, and 1 larger one. The larger plaza, where the treehouse forest now stands, occupies the largest area. The smaller plazas, aside from the slightly larger areas in front of the ticket hall and the waiting hall, aren't very large. However, these 3 smaller plazas are unused and have great potential. Boss, my initial plan is to transform the far right side of the steps before these 4 plazas into a small, ascending commercial street. We could build about 20 or 30 small shops along the sides to serve as shops. As Yinzin Meng finished, Liu Ming's eyes lit up. Wuling Railway Station was a terraced plaza, making it difficult to use. Yinzin Meng's idea was a perfect solution. He continued, the large square area to the left of the stairs will be used to build 2 small processing plants. The warehouse can be built underground, and the training ground will utilize the open space surrounding the treehouse forest to create a curved running track and several training areas. How are you going to accommodate the additional 2,000 people? The train station ticket hall is the space I need, and it won't be included in the residential area, Liu Ming asked, reminding him. The ticket hall is where the 4-color altar and the gargoyle's lair are located. Of course, it can't be exposed in broad daylight, visible to all. Even if the altar's existence and purpose are known to the world 10 years from now, sacrifice and divine grace will still be out of reach for most ordinary people. Most altars, even 10 years from now, will still only be accessible to evolutionary classes and awakened. Yinzin Meng looked puzzled, as if wondering why they were not allowed to move. The area is vast, and if fully developed, the ticket hall could accommodate at least hundreds of people. However, he quickly put this slight confusion to rest and focused on what Liu Ming had instructed him to do. Although puzzled by Liu Ming's decision, Meng explained the situation to him in detail. "Boss, if the ticket hall remains into shade, the overall building space will be greatly reduced again. Assuming the ticket hall remains into shade, what suggestions do you have?" Liu Ming, aware of the possibility of this scenario, asked. "Boss, the area occupied by the entire ticket hall is almost half of the waiting hall, and it can accommodate at least 400 to 600 people. If this space is occupied, we can only fill it from other places." At this point, Meng paused slightly, thought for a moment, and continued, "My suggestion is that we can do something about this with the newly built shopping malls and processing plants. Each of the 20 or 30 shops in the shopping mall is built 3 to 4 stories high, with shops on the first and second floors and residences on the third and fourth floors, similar to the commercial residences with apartments above the business district that are very popular now. If each shop is planned with an area of 1 to 200 square meters, there will be 6 to 90 extra floors of residences. At 25 square meters per capita, it can accommodate 3 to 400 people. The processing plant can also accommodate 1 to 200 people according to this model, thus filling the gap in the population caused by the occupation of the ticket hall." After saying this, Meng stopped and looked at Liu Ming quietly, as if waiting for him to ask a question. "I already know your general plan. What I want to know now is how long it will take you to complete these construction projects, how much manpower and resources are needed, what materials are needed, and in what approximate quantities." Liu Ming nodded, approving of the plan, and then asked the final crucial question regarding its implementation. "Boss, I need approximately 1,000 people. If I have the assistance of large-scale equipment and construction vehicles, I can basically complete the entire project in 2 months. Without them, it will probably take 3 or 4 months, or even longer. Large quantities of reinforced concrete, bricks, and wood are essential. Basic construction tools like shovels and spades are also ideal, and the more the better." Meng stated her basic requirements and the approximate requirements for completing the project. Liu Ming pondered for a moment, then said calmly, "Large-scale equipment and construction vehicles are unlikely to be available, but I will have my pets fully cooperate with you. They are much more useful than construction vehicles." Putting aside the question of whether the necessary equipment and vehicles could be found, even if they were, electricity and diesel would be a problem, and getting them into the wall of ashes would be difficult. Would they have to tear down the main gate and then transport the larger and taller construction vehicles and equipment? Meng was bewildered upon hearing this, and it took her a while to react. Pet. It would be hard for a traditional construction engineer to connect pets that only knew how to wag their tails and beg for food with construction vehicles and large equipment weighing several tons or even dozens of tons. Chapter 202 Guardian Behemoth, the so-called Hope. Less than 3 kilometers from the train station square, on West Ring Road, a group of people were desperately fleeing. "Ah. What the hell? Zuzu's being captured." A girl, running at the end of the pack, looked back with a mournful look and suddenly cried out in panic. She saw another long-haired girl, who had been running with her, had a bone-spurred mutant pierce her shoulder blade with its bony fingers. Her shoulder, visible through her off-the-shoulder dress, was bleeding profusely. She was about to be torn to shreds by the following monsters. "You guys go. I'll save Zuzu." Seeing her companions being captured by the monsters, a survivor who had been leading the pack suddenly ran back. He shouted to his hesitant companions and rushed towards the girl, who had been pinned to the ground by the mutants. The monster's sharp bony claws were about to tear through her fresh flesh. "Brother Zion, you must be careful." The girl who had spoken first glanced worriedly at her companions, then at the young man, who was about to rescue her. She gritted her teeth and continued her escape after the crowd ahead. He knew that the only person present who could save Zuzu was Brother Zion. Staying would only be a burden, perhaps even a drag. If only Zuzu was captured by the monster, Brother Zion would still be willing to save her. If he were captured as well, neither of them would be able to escape. "I can't be a burden. Run." The deformed mutant, upon seeing one of its fleeing prey suddenly stop running and charge towards it, let out a strange roar like a broken bellows. Amidst the monster's utter contempt, Zheng Xiang suddenly accelerated, and in a matter of seconds, he was within 2 or 3 meters of the monster. He clenched his fists, and the tips of his fists suddenly flashed with an icy blue light. This icy blue light swirled into a small whirlwind, streaked with tiny icy blue snowflakes. Whoosh! The icy blue whirlwind rushed towards the deformed mutant like a tornado. Bang! The fierce whirlwind collided head-on with the hideous and terrifying monster. On one side, 2 small ice blue whirlwinds, on the other, a terrifying monster whose sheer size was enough to overwhelm the enemy. Those fleeing, even distracted by the battle, felt their hearts leap into their throats. The result was shocking. This nearly 2-meter tall monster, as massive as a brown bear, was finally knocked back by the 2 ice blue whirlwinds. The areas struck by the whirlwinds formed a thin layer of frost, like frozen eaves in the dead of winter. Hiss. The ice blue whirlwind seemed to have more power than that. The deformed mutant roared and snarled in anger, clearly wounded. The mutant finally realized that this sudden prey was different from others, capable of harming it, and its previous disdain faded. Finally, no longer eager to enjoy its meal, it flung Zuzu away, who was nearly hanging on its bony finger. Zuzu's body flew out like a bird with broken wings, crashing heavily to the ground. The mutant finally launched its attack. This bone spur mutant's mutated organs were distinctly different from those of the bone spur cannon chamber mutant, one of Liu Ming's 3 subordinates. This was a melee-focused mutant, covered in bone spurs like deadly weapons. Like a charging warrior, it bent its legs slightly and launched itself at Chu Zengxian like a cannonball. With a swish, a sound like a weapon slicing through a hard object echoed as the mutant's blade-sharp bone claws fiercely grasped Zheng Xiang's arm. But his arm didn't seem injured or even severed. Zheng Xiang's hands, like his fists, shone with an icy blue sheen. A layer of frost coated his sturdy arms, as if covered in ice gauntlets. These 2 frost gauntlets made his flesh and blood form a near indestructible barrier against the mutant's bone claws. Before Zheng Xiang could even breathe a sigh of relief, hordes of monsters descended, each one pouncing on their prey. Just as Zheng Xiang struggled to deal with the horde of monsters, his injuries mounting, the fear of the fleeing crowd was finally ignited by the approaching monsters, and a wave of despair erupted among them. I can't run any longer. I can't escape. Countless monsters swarmed over the crowd, closing in ever closer, until some people's clothes were practically touched by the monsters. Suddenly, a shocked voice rang out. What is that place? Shit, isn't this the train station? Why is it fenced off? The gate is locked. It's over. Woo woo woo. I don't want to die yet. Police officer, soldiers, please save me. Before the ash wall gleaming with a faint orange glow, the desperate people who had finally reached this point after desperately fleeing looked on, their paths nearly blocked by the towering wall, and the monsters were already chasing them from behind. Crack. A young girl was knocked to the ground by a powerful cannibal corpse, her neck easily shattered. Puff. A middle-aged man was pierced through the back of his head by the monster's fingers, his brains ripped out and feasted upon. Everyone was completely frantic in despair. The monster was so close, and with their companions tragically killed, their turn would soon be theirs. Even if a savior appeared, it would likely be after they were dead. Before the high wall that had filled everyone with despair, several grey inconspicuous towers suddenly flashed with black light. The sound of sharp weapons piercing flesh continued to echo, and with each sound, the monsters, pierced by the black light, fell one after another. However, the lowest level cannibal corpses were completely devoid of intelligence and knew no fear. The tragic deaths of their companions did nothing to quell their hunger, and countless monsters continued to pour in like a tide. Inside the wall of ash, Liu Ming, who was conversing with Yin Xinmeng in the library villa, suddenly frowned, wondering, why is the energy in the stone fortress arrow tower depleting so quickly? In his mind, the arrow tower, which he had imbued with a trace of his spiritual power, was automatically firing sharp arrows at the incoming enemies. The energy consumed by the arrow tower is drawn from raw stones, which are extremely valuable. Zhenirang, how dare you guard the gate? Liu Ming's furious roar sent tremors through the entire bookstore square. Meanwhile, Zhenirang, tasked with guarding the Wall of Ashes gate, was sound asleep behind the iron gate, oblivious to Liu Ming's bark. Sir Ji Zedong, the boss is calling you. A passing search team member heard Liu Ming's roar and hurried over to try to wake him. After spending some time with him, they had already come to understand Ji Zedong's character. True to his name, he was cunning, sleepy, greedy, and a show-off. Just as everyone called him Sir Ji Zedong, he commanded everyone to call him Sir, lest he scratch you with his massive claws, weighing over a ton. This was the conclusion drawn with the blood and tears of no fewer than 20 unfortunate souls. Before this, everyone, like Liu Ming, had been calling him by his first name. Burp 30 seconds later, Ji Zedong slowly awoke, a cloud of sand mixed with dust and water vapor spraying into the faces of several people. Ji Zedong's lantern-sized dragon eyes were filled with confusion. He was bewildered, wondering why these cowards, who trembled at the sight of him, had woken him up. Ji Zedong, are you looking for death? The Arrow Tower's energy is exhausted, so I lose your blood as a power source. Liu Ming's roar echoed again. Roar. Ji Zedong finally understood what was happening. Like a grasshopper, he leaped 3 feet high, scrambling to his feet in panic, knocking the surrounding search team members to their knees. He quickly leaped out of the Wall of Ash. The Guardian has been dispatched. How cool. A young man, slightly addicted to anime, excitedly exclaimed to his companions as he watched Ji Zedong wake up and leap out. What Guardian Master? That's a giant guardian beast, Boss Liu Ming's pet. His companions scoffed at the young man's title. He felt a bit embarrassed to hear a highly intelligent being call a monster master. If you have the guts, don't call it master to its face. Don't blame me if you get eaten, the young man scoffed with a curled lip. You should call it to its face. After all, it's boss's pet, but it seems quite afraid of him. His companions, a little timid, quickly changed the subject. Boom. Ji Zedong, falling from the sky like a massive artillery shell, slammed into the monsters, instantly crushing no fewer than 10 of them, with many more limbs severed by the aftermath. The crowd ahead, already retreating to the Wall of Ash, and with nowhere to retreat, staggered and lost their balance in the intense tremors. Open the gate, search team, attack. The large iron gate behind the survivors suddenly swung open, and a steady powerful voice echoed. Looking at the slowly opening door, the desperate crowd suddenly felt a glimmer of hope. A broken program went live today, and the case that had plagued Fengsha for almost a month finally came to a close. I still owe everyone an update starting this week. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 203, Brute Giant, Summoning the Dead. Ding. The gates of the Wall of Ashes swung open with a clang. Yun Fanghe, on guard duty today, led a dozen or so search team members out with murderous intent. Although she had once mastered the power of fire magic seals, Liu Ming's incorporation of the Ember Flame completely destroyed the magic seal battle diagram, causing everyone's magic seal powers to disappear, including her own. However, Yun Fanghe's class change to Fire Mage gave her ample personal strength. At least as the search leader, she remained unwavering, her prestige undiminished by the loss of her magic seal powers. The search team members, who had risen through the ranks and advanced, held her in awe and devotion second only to Liu Ming. Watching a group of fierce individuals burst forth from behind the iron gates of the confined wall, the survivors felt as excited as exhausted explorers who had drifted on the vast ocean for years, nearly exhausted, to discover a new land. Zhui, arrange for them to go in. Zangayan, follow me. Yun Fanghe said to one of the two evolved beings following her as they passed the fleeing survivors. The sturdy young man named Zhui panicked. Big sister, send someone else. Who's going to protect you if I'm gone? Stop talking nonsense. Didn't I leave Zangayan behind? Hurry. Yun Fanghe hurled a walnut-sized fireball, sending a mutant flying. She glared at him and ordered. Gritting her teeth, Zhui could only run towards the throng of survivors rushing towards the Wall of Ashes gates. Follow me, everyone. Don't get in a mess. As he finished speaking, His muscles suddenly expanded abnormally, seemingly increasing in size by several times. His tight sports t-shirt was instantly bulged with rock-hard muscles. Everyone scrambling frantically towards the wall of ashes gates was startled. A man of normal build, albeit a bit more muscular than average, had suddenly grown to the size of the Hulk. His 2 to 3 meter tall frame nearly blocked half of the massive iron gate, causing the crowd behind him, still trying to squeeze through, to pause. Their frantic escape temporarily halted. I told you to calm down and come in one by one. Anyone who dares to push again, I'll throw you into the monster pile. Perhaps some of you doubt my accuracy, so try it. The enlarged Zhui smirked. This was his professional ability, a brute transformation unique to brute warriors. This was because he was only an E-rank brute, and his brute transformation was in its infancy. A D-rank or even C-rank brute would likely have become a behemoth over 3 meters tall, capable of overturning a dump truck with a single blow, a humanoid behemoth. Even this appearance intimidated the escaping survivors trying to break through the wall of ashes. Even with pursuers, the man who looked more terrifying than a monster was so close, and no one dared to test his limits. Very good. Now, everyone, follow my lead. The elderly, the weak, women, and children, come in first. Men, wait at the back. Anyone who dares to push in, I'll smash the shit out of you, Zhui said, pounding the ground with both hands. The fleeing men, who had been hesitant to obey the monstrous man before them, now lined up obediently as the pits, dented by the pounding of flesh, appeared on the ground. Very good. Take your time. Don't rush. I'm here, and none of you little shrimps will die. Zhui was pleased with his progress. These newcomers needed to be intimidated by force, otherwise they'd assume a world of equality and love. But as soon as he finished speaking, he was slapped in the face. A man at the back of the line was suddenly grabbed by the right leg by an agile mutant that had followed him, dragged into the pile of corpses, and torn into a bloody mess. Zhui's face turned grim. So you're going to make things difficult for me, fat tiger? Boom. The brute, nearly 10 times the size of the agile mutant, slew like a prehistoric beast among a flock of sheep, their ferocity unleashing the ferocity of ordinary cannibals like harvested wheat. The mutant, ripping into its prey's flesh, felt a surge of remorse, abandoning the now dead man's body and throwing it away. Bang! Zhui casually grabbed 2 cannibal corpses and hurled them like a giant's hurricane, hitting the mutant squarely in the back. The mutant froze, and Zhui leaped forward, crushing the terrifying creature, a death-like figure to ordinary eyes, into a pulp. Zhui, go back and direct the others inside. Leave this to us. Seeing Zhui's sudden slaying of the monster, the orderly retreating group broke down again, jostling for position. Women, elderly people, and children were trampled and injured. Yun Fanghua shouted, "Okay, big sister." Zhui, realizing she had neglected her duty in her anger, gave a shy smile before returning to the wall of ashes gates. Zangian, hold back the monsters in front of the gate. Yun Fanghua ordered. Fang Zangian waved a bone arrow, sending a swift mutant charging at Yun Fanghua flying. She quickly refused. No. Zhui and I are gone. Who will protect you, big sister? Just summon a skeleton warrior for me. Go and hold them off. Otherwise, I'll kill you if the monsters charge in. Yun Fanghua said anxiously, watching the horde of monsters approach the wall of ashes. Servants of darkness from afar, the dead who have lain silent for millennia on the Greybone Mountain, obey my call, in the name of the necromancer Wu Zangian. Wu Zangian gritted his teeth, swung his bone staff, and chanted, summoning a shadowy gate of bones. A massive figure composed entirely of bones squeezed through the somewhat crowded gate. Its body was taller, wider, and bulkier than the gate itself, making it difficult to squeeze through. The figure, clad in rusted black armor, clutched a massive sword, each the width of man and the height of man. At first glance, it looked like a human heavy swordsman, but the gleaming white bones piercing its torn visor revealed its true identity, a skeleton. A skeleton heavy swordsman, that was the name of this monster. Among the lower level undead skeletons, it was undoubtedly a high-end creature. Just the sight of Wu Zangian, who summoned 10 skeletons without a break, and was sweating profusely after summoning this one, showed it was far superior. Skeleton heavy swordsman, protect the leader. Wu Zhangyan had just finished speaking, and without waiting for Yun Fanghe to react, he sprinted towards the wall of ashes, single-handedly blocking the horde of monsters. Yun Fanghe's eyes flickered with a strange emotion as she watched her most trusted subordinate, instead of summoning a skeleton warrior as a shield as she had requested, summon a higher-level skeleton heavy swordsman. This brat. Summoning a D-rank skeleton heavy blade master was an absolute burden for this mere rank necromancer. Although she knew that this skeleton heavy blade master, only a higher rank than Wu Zhangyan, had been contracted by accident, she felt a strange warmth well up in her heart at the thought of this D-rank summon, always cherished as a trump card and treasure, now being summoned to protect her. In peacetime, she lived simply for the sake of survival, a life of intrigue and deception, unable to discern, or even to recognize, anyone's genuine concern. In the apocalypse, where survival was the sole nemesis, she experienced this feeling. Meanwhile, Wu Zhangyan had reached the monster's path towards the wall of ashes. The survivors still queuing to enter, felt a chill in their hearts as they saw a thin figure suddenly appear behind them. They worried that the monster would be torn to pieces before them, and they also worried that after his death, the monster would advance unimpeded, putting their lives in jeopardy. Dead of the night, wanderers of the plains of bones, come forth and fight alongside me. Wu Zhangyan swung his staff, his left hand tracing mysterious magical paths into runes of light and shadow, shouting to the sky. As he moved, skeletons, brandishing rusty swords, appeared before him like a cascade of dumplings. The moment they landed, they madly charged at the monsters, instantly halting the onslaught of the undead. Ordinary cannibals could barely withstand a single blow, only mutants could match them. Among these skeletons were several even larger, clad in rusted black half armor. These were skeleton warriors, the evolved form of the skeleton soldiers. In the battle order of the undead skeletons, they stood above the skeletons, each capable of decisively defeating a mutant. Wielding great swords far heavier than those of ordinary skeletons, they steadily harvested the monsters' heads with each strike. Chapter 204, Crazy Mage, Rookie Attack, Part 1. Over a dozen skeleton soldiers, seemingly ready to fall apart at any moment, and a few brutal executioner-like skeleton warriors, instantly divided the hundreds of attacking cannibals into 3 separate circles, each engaged in separate battles. Under the powerful skeletal warriors' heavy swords, these seemingly ferocious, nearly invincible monsters fell one after another like harvest wheat. The survivors who hadn't yet managed to retreat to the wall of ashes were stunned by this scene, their pace slowing, and they cast stunned and disbelieving glances at Wu Zhangyan. Wu Zhangyan didn't realize he had become the center of attention, but he wasn't having an easy time either. Summoning undead creatures to fend off a horde of hundreds of cannibals wasn't easy. Furthermore, many of these monsters abandoned the less appealing skeletons and turned directly on him, the culprit behind the massive skeleton swarm. Without the protection of his summoned undead, Wu Zhangyan struggled to deal with the sheer number of undead at close range. Puff. Sizzle. The necromancer's signature spells fang bone arrows and dark energy corrosive rays pierced flesh with terrifying sounds. Amidst the torrent of undead magic, no fewer than 10 cannibals had already surrounded Wu Zhangyan. Swish. Just as the monsters were within 10 meters of Wu Zhangyan, an incredibly swift figure suddenly leaped out from among the 10 previously inconspicuous cannibals. Most people only felt a fleeting sight of a back before its sharp claws appeared less than half a meter from Wu Zhangyan's face. The young man, who had suddenly appeared alone to block the horde of monsters, was about to die. Bang. With a loud bang and a flash of black light, the owner of the sudden attacking black claw was sent flying like a rolling gourd, flying backwards for a long distance before recovering. At a crucial moment, a sharp arrow from the stone fort's arrow tower saved Wu Zhangyan's life. Seeing Wu Zhangyan safe, Yun Fanghe shouted, "Everyone, follow me and get closer to Lord Jizerang." With that, she wielded her skeletal heavy sword like the tip of a sharp knife, frantically advancing towards the battlefield, where Jizerang was wreaking havoc. Everyone knew that, if they could gather around the boss's pet, Jizerang, this sudden battle would be perfectly ended. Therefore, their top priority was to gather around Jizerang. Meanwhile, Jizerang, irritated by Liu Ming's rebuke for sleeping in earlier, fought even more ferociously than before. The power of the trickle or dragon fire suddenly increased significantly, slaughtering nearly every attacking monster within 10 meters of it with its massive claws and dragon breath. Many monsters abandoned their siege of the nearly invincible behemoth and turned their attention to Yunfanghe and her companions. Damn it. How can these mindless mutants pick on the weak? Yunfanghe and his men were dealing with the cannibal corpses, their hearts pounding with confusion. Anyone seeing the horde of monsters attacking Jizeran would likely react in the same way. A young man, wearing sunglasses to hide a scar that pierced most of his eye, slashed back a ferocious mutant with his sword, and was nearly overwhelmed by several attacking monsters. Fortunately, Yunfanghe's fireball blasted the incoming monsters away, saving his life. Even after being rescued, he barely had time to express his gratitude before joining the battle. The monsters, still not completely dead, lunged at him again. With a few powerful blows, the young man, with over 10 powerful swings, finally broke through the encirclement. Drenched in sweat, he anxiously shouted, "Big sister, there are more and more monsters." At this rate, his dozen or so men would soon be unable to hold back. Inside the wall of ashes, beside the bunker, numerous search team members and over a dozen search team leaders all watched Liu Ming as he descended from the treehouse villa. Ma Jun spoke up, "Boss, Yunfanghe's team is too short-handed. Give us the order to reinforce them." The hundreds of search team members gathered in front of the treehouse plaza, their faces etched with anxiety as they heard the sounds of fighting outside. Those engaged in the bloody battle outside were all their companions, the ones they had spent the past few days with. Although their team wasn't on duty today, and according to regulations, they were all on rest, unless the situation was too critical to handle, everyone spontaneously gathered together, feeling it was their duty to fight side by side and repel the enemy. Consequently, the hundreds of passionate search team members were completely stopped by Liu Ming alone. Even Liu Huchun, the normally heartless fellow, was now anxious. "Yes, boss. If we are too late and something happens to Yunfanghe and a dozen of her men, it'll be too late to regret it. Boss, give the order quickly. I'll take my men out and smash those monsters who dare to come and die." "Yes, boss." Seeing his men pleading one after another, Liu Ming cast a cold glance. Those who were about to continue speaking were startled and fell silent. "What's with all the chaos and confusion? Do you need to tell me what's going on outside?" "I know what's going on," Liu Ming said slowly, looking at them coldly. He raised his eyebrows and continued with interest, "Gather all the Class C professionals immediately. They've been training for a few days, and now it's time for the small test." "Boss, this is bad. They're all newbies." Everyone cried out in disbelief. Liu Ming twitched his lips, leaned sideways, and glared at the crowd sarcastically, saying, "Newbie? Who of you wasn't a newbie the first time we fought monsters? Do we have to wait a year or two until we've become seasoned veterans before we can start fighting monsters? Foolish idea. 2 minutes. I only want 2 minutes. I want every single Class C combatant in front of me." As Liu Ming finished speaking, hundreds of search team members scattered to search for people. Within a minute, over 600 Class C combatants and hundreds of search team members appeared before Liu Ming. When the massive crowd arrived at the Wall of Ashes gate, they were all surprised to find that Liu Ming had somehow piled up a vast array of long and short weapons in front of him. Spears, daggers, clubs, knives, and forks. "All newbies, take a weapon each, and prepare to go out and fight," Liu Ming commanded calmly, looking at the 600 or so people standing obediently before him, their faces filled with confusion. "Why do we ordinary people have to go out? Aren't there extraordinary people in the search team?" The crowd instantly boiled over when Liu Ming said this. Chapter 205, Crazy Mage, Rookie Attack, Part 2. "No way, boss. I've only been training for 2 or 3 days. I don't have any combat experience yet." "Boss, will these senior members of the search team also join us in the fight?" Liu Ming's words sent a tizzy through the crowd. Although 2 or 3 days of grueling training had completely separated them from the rookies of a few days ago, few among the hundreds of people were truly prepared to engage the monsters, and so, almost everyone was hesitant. "No, the entire search team will remain in the shelter. Only you will go out to meet the enemy." Liu Ming had known this would happen when he made the decision, so he wasn't surprised and remained calm. Just as he was about to continue, something surprising occurred. Two figures emerged from the throng, one muscular, the other wiry. As they emerged, they each picked up a weapon from the pile. Their chosen weapons were also different. The burly man selected a heavy steel shovel, the kind used for digging through reinforced concrete. It must have weighed at least 30 or 40 pounds, yet he wielded it with such vigor and energy that it was like a stick. Another man, of medium height, yet undeniably imposing, picked up an alloy dagger and eyed the wall of ashes gate with eager anticipation. These were Zhang Ziyuan and Guangcheng. During the initial combat test, they had demonstrated the most challenging of the 8 crazy fist techniques, rock solid soft body and dynamic soft eyes, respectively, earning Liu Ming's praise and receiving promotions. Their actions proved Liu Ming's judgment correct. Liu Ming narrowed his eyes, smirking at the two. You two, very good. Now that we've set an example, the remaining holdouts will be much easier to deal with, he thought. Everyone else, within 30 seconds, select your own weapons and prepare to depart to meet the enemy. Those who refuse to take up arms will be automatically removed from the C-class professional ranks. Upon hearing of their expulsion, many breathed a sigh of relief. Many who volunteered to join the C-class combat professions had absolutely no intention of fighting monsters. After all, fighting monsters is risky and mortal, and a single misstep could lead to death. Therefore, not everyone is prepared to confront monsters head-on. They see themselves as safe with Liu Ming and other nearly inhumanly powerful transcendents standing in their way. They joined the C-class combat professions solely for the higher pay offered to them compared to the D-class professions. But now the treatment is indeed a little bit higher than that of Class D professionals, but the daily devil training makes them suffer. Some people can't hold on any longer. Even if they are not eliminated, they don't want to be trained half to death. At this time, I heard that refusing to take up weapons will only result in being eliminated from Class C professionals, and I was secretly happy. I didn't know how to get out of this devilish training, and now how can I not seize this God-given opportunity? Many people immediately decided not to take up weapons and wait to be eliminated. But Liu Ming's words have not been finished yet, and his next words instantly chilled the hearts of those who had these ideas. Liu Ming said coldly, and expel you from the shelter. Put you on the blacklist and permanently banned from entering the shelter. As soon as Liu Ming finished speaking, more than 600 people picked up their weapons within 30 seconds, waiting for Liu Ming's further instructions. What a joke. Expel them from the shelter. For them, this shelter is almost a paradise in the apocalypse. At least in their apocalyptic survival experience these days, they have not seen any place so vibrant, where they don't have to worry about food and safety, let alone be frightened by sudden attacks from monsters all day long. If all the newcomers were uneasy when they first came here, now everyone has a sense of security and hope in their hearts. Even if they are forced to leave, they will probably not leave. Everyone line up, the search team will stay in the shelter, and Class C professionals will go out to meet the enemy. Following Liu Ming's order, Zhang Ziyuan and Guangcheng took the lead, and quickly fought their way out of the wall of ashes. The moment they walked out of the wall of ashes, they were met head-on by a group of fleeing troops. The crowd did not stop for a moment, because of the unfamiliar faces of the survivors, because the great devil Liu Ming was still supervising the battle from behind, and no one dared to show any sign of desertion. After a group of Class C combat professionals had already fought with the tide of monsters outside the wall of ashes, Liu Ming summoned the natural spirits and ordered, Kemenwen, Gongweixin, go and keep an eye on these rookies, don't let them suffer too heavy casualties. The two followed the crowd out of the gate. Liu Ming frowned at the influx of refugees and said, Marjun, take people to settle these new survivors. At this time, the fighters who rushed out of the wall of ashes with spears and clubs had already started fighting with the monsters. Yun Fanghe and his men were struggling to resist monsters that were dozens of times their number. Suddenly, they heard the sound of fighting in the back, and they all felt relieved, knowing that reinforcement had arrived. But when everyone repelled another wave of monster attacks and turned to look at the reinforcement, they all had dull expressions and distorted faces. Damn it, well, let these rookies out. Are they reinforcement or just a burden? Everyone in Yun Fanghe's team was thinking the same thing at this moment. Gong Weeksin and Kamengun, who came out right after the rookie, made everyone feel relieved. Finally, two reliable reinforcement had arrived. Once these two joined the battle, the outcome of this battle was already determined. It would definitely be a great victory. When Yun Fanghua thought of this, he became excited and quickly directed his subordinates to move closer to Gong Weeksin, the great killer, and Kamengun, the strongest priest. Seeing that there were two new people, and they were both old acquaintances of his, Jizeli Rang was afraid that these two would steal his victory. He immediately showed his power and swung his tail to sweep away dozens of monsters. He bent his hind legs slightly and jumped like an oversized shrimp, instantly jumping nearly 10 meters. Boom. A black shadow that covered the sky and the sun came, accompanied by a sound of earthquakes. Jizeli Rang had smashed a huge pit in the area where the monsters were the most densely populated and the largest in number. All of the hundreds of monsters that were densely packed were killed on the spot in this collision that was like Mars hitting the earth. Brother Fang, let me help. Zhang Ziyuan felt relieved when he saw Jizeli Rang so powerful. He swung his shovel and knocked away two cannibal corpses that were blocking his way. With a shout, he rushed towards Fang Zhangyan, who was single-handedly blocking hundreds of cannibal corpses. At this time, only 7 or 8 of the more than 10 skeletons of the dead that Fang Zhangyan had originally summoned were left. The others had all fallen apart in the fierce battle, scattered like bones on the ground, their soul fires extinguished, and their bodies could not be reconnected. Only 3 skeleton warriors were still fighting in the front line. Although their black armor was covered with horrible scars from scratches and bites, they were still as steady as a rock, fighting in the front and constantly reaping the heads of cannibal corpses. Chapter 206. The first test of the sword. The sword energy is everywhere. Since arriving at the shelter, this was the first time the rookies had truly ventured beyond the wall of ash. They had never imagined that their first foray would lead them into a life or death battle with a terrifying monster. But any extraneous emotion at this moment was meaningless, and any thought that caused their minds to freeze was a deadly threat. Fate no. It was Liu Ming's mighty hand had already fiercely propelled them out of the supposedly safe zone to face a baptism of blood and battle. The monster was right in front of them. Afraid? Immediate death. Fight with all your might. Maybe you could even survive and return home to eat a hot meal. Fight. Fight. Kill. The hundreds of people who had just been half forced out of the shelter by Liu Ming suddenly, as if their fears were awakened, ceased to hold back at the shouts of their leaders, whose cosmic energy was exploding. Hundreds of them merged into a torrent, charging towards the nearby horde of zombies. After all, getting bitten wouldn't mutate them, so let's fight. The ripping sounds of sharp weapons piercing flesh, the thuds of heavy objects colliding, the snapping of bones all mingled with the roar of the fierce battles between monsters and humans. At this moment, even those within the thick of it, not only those at a distance, but also those directly within, could barely distinguish the various sounds. In the midst of the battle, it was impossible to tell whether the spurting blood was from one's own wounds or from those of a comrade. Standing expressionlessly on the wall of ash, Liu Ming watched the battle nearby. A flicker of satisfaction flickered in his eyes as he witnessed this courageous, relentless fight, with no retreat in sight. Looking at his men in a stalemate, Liu Ming sighed softly. As expected, people need to be pushed. One person might cower, but when there are dozens or hundreds of them, if someone has the courage to stand up, even blind obedience can embolden everyone else and ignite their fighting spirit. There's also the possibility of a single coward, leading them all in retreat. Ma Jun, who was observing the battle from the sidelines, suddenly remarked. As the combatants engaged the monster horde, they temporarily halted the monster's advance toward the wall of ashes. However, the almost endless stream of monsters from behind continued to surge past Yun Fanghua and the others. This placed immense pressure on the 600 combatants, and casualties gradually began to occur. However, for those unlucky enough not to be fatally wounded by the monster's direct hits, the remaining injured members recovered almost instantly with Kamengun's treatment and were ready to rejoin the battle. Just as another wave of hundreds of zombies was about to join the fray, a gentle gust of wind suddenly appeared over the battle area. Less than 10 meters from the ground, it suddenly became incredibly fierce. Wisps of wind first whistled like a midwinter wind, then transformed into blades of wind and frost, swishing towards the wave of monsters. Light-colored wind blades, almost visible to the naked eye, suddenly descended from the sky. Amidst a continuous puffing sound, countless monsters fell to the ground, a shower of blood. Before they even joined the battle, nearly 1/5 of the monster horde had been instantly annihilated, and the seemingly endless wind blades continued to rain down from the sky. When someone looked toward the source of the wind blades, they saw a figure clad in white as snow, standing like a solitary and supreme swordsman, riding the wind. With every swing of her 3-foot-long blade, countless invisible winds converged on her like birds flocking to a phoenix. With a flick of her left hand, the blade of the long sword in her right hand, the gusts of wind transformed into razor-sharp blades that slashed and destroyed everything, descending from the sky. Sword God. The residents of the shelter and countless survivors watched the graceful figure in white, standing high in the sky, slaying swarms of monsters with the same calm demeanor, as if strolling in the garden. They were all astonished, as if witnessing a miracle. Gong Weixin was truly the right person to be given the wind-breathing swordsman class. Liu Ming was also amazed by Gong Weixin's fighting style. When the power of wind combined with the sword power of Gong Weixin, a woman whose sword energy had been reawakened, the resulting destructive force was unmatched even by Liu Ming. Gong Weixin's sword energy, enhanced by the wind breath swordsman's wind power, unleashed a terrifying force comparable to a simplified and weakened version of the sword saint's ultimate move, the sword key storm. Gong Weixin single-handedly blocked the monster reinforcement, instantly boosting the morale of those engaged in the battle. With experts at the forefront and a mysterious figure constantly healing their wounded companions, everyone finally felt relieved. Their fear of a first battle was greatly alleviated, and they all drew their weapons and engaged the enemy ferociously. Many of them performed admirably, earning Liu Ming's approval. He also discovered several promising talents suited to different combat roles. As the battle dragged on and casualties mounted uncontrollably, Liu Ming finally gave the order, all search team members, attack. It's time to clean up the mess. Let's get as many of our rookies back alive as possible. With his command, the search team, already frazzled by the rookies' battle, rushed out of the wall of ashes like a herd of pigs. My axe is thirsty. Bang. A nearly 3-meter tall power-type mutant was smashed into a pulp by a dark red axe that had burst out of the wall of ashes, sending red and white debris splattering everywhere. A long-haired man, dashing out behind it, dodged the bloody brains and cursed, "Gu Yuan, are you disgusting? You're still so rude." It was Gu Yuan and Liu Huchun. Bang. As he finished his words, a short spear, like silver lightning, ripped another leaping swift-type mutant into a shower of blood and shattered bones, sending countless sticky, soft, and hard objects splattering everywhere. This time, Liu Huchun was finally unable to dodge, and was directly hit by a ball of flesh and blood. He roared in anger, "Damn it, Fangan, are you trying to cause trouble? Ha ha ha." Everyone burst into laughter, except for those who were also drenched in flesh and blood, as well as Liu Huchun's subordinates and members of his search team. The numerous escapees who had just passed through the wall of ashes gate and arrived at the shelter were stunned to see the people laughing and slaughtering monsters in front of the gate. Were these people going to fight monsters or just to kill chickens and dogs for a wild camping trip? Why did they feel that the terrifying monsters that had chased hundreds of them to nowhere were no more than chickens to be slaughtered? Any few people who appeared could easily kill these mutants, which were countless times more terrifying than ordinary monsters. Alright, you unlucky guys, stop standing there. You still don't know who's in charge here? A rotund figure suddenly appeared in front of the group of extremely embarrassed escapees and demanded. He tried to put on a slightly amiable smile. Although his smile was still very business-like, it could still give the people who had just escaped death a sense of security. This fat man, who was almost as fat as a bull, was naturally the logistics manager appointed by Liu Ming himself. He was in charge of almost all the chores of the shelter from top to bottom. He was well deserved to be called Director Kin by everyone. Among the thousands of residents of the shelter, his popularity was second only to Liu Ming, Ma Jun, and Gong Weixin. Now that a newcomer had arrived, he was naturally the first to step forward to receive him. "I got off work at 9 o'clock and have been typing since then. I'm drowsy. I wrote the wrong chapter title. VIP chapter. Fengsha, an old newbie, doesn't know how to change the chapter title. Let me ask the editor to change it for everyone. Brothers, please forgive me. Chapter 207, Impression of Sunset, Bloodstained Sun, Part 1. If the apocalypse brought something other than despair, Lin Feng believed it was the scenes he witnessed today. In reality, he and most of the refugees, who could have been his fellow refugees, were strangers. They hadn't originally been in the same group, but they had all been holed up in the Chuxing Science Park, nearly 10 miles from the train station. The Chuxing Science Park, a provincial high-tech zone specially approved by the Xiangnan provincial government, aims to revitalize the technology industry in northwestern Chu. However, the hundreds of millions of dollars invested in the park appear to be no longer in use. The park was only officially established in the first half of this year, and major tech companies have been moving in. This has resulted in a population density far lower than in other areas of Wuling, allowing their group to survive the apocalypse to this day. However, their good times were clearly short-lived. Despite the extremely low population density within the Chuxing Science Park, monsters were omnipresent. In the several larger refuge areas within the park, casualties were constantly being tormented by monsters. Just a few days ago, while searching for supplies at the science park, the group unexpectedly discovered a master possessing supernatural powers. He could instantly freeze monsters with the icy frost of his fists, a true Superman. Seeing such a superhuman capable of fighting ordinary monsters head-on should have been a cause for joy and excitement. Initially, everyone was secretly delighted, believing they had found hope. If only they could master such superpowers, wouldn't they be able to slaughter monsters and reverse the tables? Apparently, there were many who shared this sentiment. After seeing the man everyone called Ice Fist Xiang, everyone expressed a desire to follow him. But joy begets sorrow. Ultimately, the group of survivors, initially led by Ice Fist Xiang, expanded to 2,000 to 3,000 in just a few days. Furthermore, Xiang was a man of great responsibility, always adhering to the principle that with great ability comes great responsibility. He welcomed anyone who sought his protection, or wished to join his team. Within a few days, survivors from across Chuxing Science Park and surrounding areas flocked to the site. Thousands of people crowded into a single building, attracting the attention of countless monsters. The zombie horde was overwhelming, and ultimately, unable to resist, everyone had no choice but to embark on a collective escape. Of the 2,000 to 3,000 people, less than 1,000 managed to reach the train station by chance. The rest perished along the way. Lin Feng, besides the 7 or 8 who had initially followed Brother Bingquan Xiang, was one of the first to learn of this master and join his group. Initially, he had been considered relatively safe within Chuxing Tech Park, but as more and more people joined Xiang's group, his sense of crisis grew. Ultimately, this surge in survivors led to the complete destruction of the shelter by monsters, resulting in countless casualties. This escape was entirely due to the shelter's overcrowding and Brother Bingquan Xiang's unlimited capacity for survivors. Uncle Lin Feng was left to follow the crowd in shame, fleeing with the rest of the group. Under normal circumstances, he would have cursed, but now, he felt that thanks to this escape, he wouldn't have known what the outside world was like. He trembled with excitement. In the entire Chuxing Tech Park, the most powerful known superpower was Brother Bingquan Xiang. There were 2 or 3 others who also possessed superpowers, but their combat effectiveness was barely above that of a sturdy, weapon-wielding ordinary person. Their abilities were barely above par, barely comparable to that of the perverted Ice Fist Xiang. However, even at this former train station, he'd casually spotted no fewer than 10 individuals whose combat power surpassed Ice Fist Xiang's. The hundreds of others also possessed superpowers, many of whom were as powerful as Ice Fist Xiang. Even those who weren't as powerful as Xiang were still several times more powerful than the few he'd encountered before. This proved that superpowers were no longer a rare commodity here. Furthermore, awakening superpowers shouldn't be entirely dependent on fate. Everyone has a chance and hope. Otherwise, how could those hundreds of superpowered individuals be explained? Furthermore, those who had just passed by him, charging out with various weapons to fight the monster, were not to be underestimated. Their morale and relentless fighting spirit were unmatched by the desperate refugees like himself. who were like dogs that had lost their homes, only caring for their lives. Even now, even if he had a weapon, he wouldn't dare go out and fight the monsters, but everyone here seemed to dare. He had originally thought of superpowers as mere reflections of the moon and the water and the flowers in the mirror, but now they were so close to him, and he couldn't help but feel overwhelmed. He must have superpowers too. Someone tell me, who are you all? Where are you from? Kinyu suddenly asked. As he finished his question, while everyone was still looking at each other, no one wanting to be the first to speak, Lin Feng immediately stepped forward and quickly answered everything he knew. Kinyu nodded slightly after hearing this and said, then you're lucky to have made it here. I wonder how you, weaklings with no fighting power at all, managed to make it 10 miles through monster territory alive. Your answer is very detailed and excellent. It saves me the trouble of asking others. Very good. Tell me your name. Kinyu said, looking at Lin Feng, who had just answered his question, and nodded approvingly. My name is Lin Feng. May I know your last name, sir? Lin Feng replied with a beaming smile. He was secretly delighted, thankful he had responded first, otherwise, he wouldn't have known how he'd even started a conversation with the old man in this mysterious place. Kinyu glanced at him with a half smile, before turning and leaving. You'll find out my name later. Just as Lin Feng was wondering where the fat man was going, he saw him leap onto the 4-meter high wall of ash with agility that belied his size. Only then did he realize that this fat man, who had been chatting with him for so long, was actually a master. Boss, what's going on? Kinyu, having leaped onto the wall, looked at Liu Ming, whose expression was sullen, and asked gravely. Liu Ming pointed to a dark spot not far outside the wall, and replied in a cold voice, nothing, just a minor nuisance. Everyone on the wall looked in the direction Liu Ming pointed, only to see dark shadows approaching the shelter at an alarming speed. A demonic army? Kinyu's voice was strained. Since becoming logistics director, he had long since withdrawn from combat, having not personally drawn his sword, and charged into the front lines. Seeing the approaching demonic horde, infinitely more terrifying than the cannibals, was naturally a cause for concern. It was sunset, the setting sun a blood red hue, and the battlefield before the wall of ashes was thick with the scent of blood. The fiery red of the setting sun and the blood reflected each other, creating a gruesome scene. Against this tragic backdrop, Liu Ming slowly raised his right hand. Amidst the instant expressions of the crowd, a previously insignificant bracelet rapidly expanded and transformed into a giant dragon, dancing in the wind, charging towards the distant demonic army that chilled everyone to the bone. Dragon? The sight of a supernatural dragon appearing out of thin air in the summer sunset, soaring towards the terrifying monster, was deeply imprinted in the minds of countless people. Chapter 208, Impression of Sunset, Bloodstained Sun, Part 2. With the arrival of Arfei, the winged claw dragon snake, the battle at the Wall of Ashes was a foregone conclusion. Swarms of monsters were gradually reduced to ash by the terrifying force of the dim, devouring flames. Their flesh and blood were scorched by the unholy power of the flames into pure, primal energy, ultimately devoured by Arfei. Seeing Arfei's dominance, Ji Zhenrong, who had been attacking slowly, suddenly roared and summoned countless sandstorms, which then struck the area where the monsters were most concentrated. Like a tornado, Ji Zhenrong swept through the area, completely obliterating everything in its path. Monsters struck head-on by the sandstorms were pierced by shotgun blasts, their flesh and blood pierced with holes and wounds. Even with the formidable vitality of a cannibal corpse, such damage was a recipe for death. Ji Zhenrong's sandstorms continued with a relentless rumble, sweeping in all directions. The roar even startled Sumi, who had been snoring in Liu Ming's arms. Sumi, waking from sleep, stretched out its furry paws and glanced at Ji Zhenrong, who was making such a commotion and looking quite pleased with himself. A flicker of human contempt gleamed in its eyes. The battle had come and gone swiftly, with Liu Ming's 2 dragon pets and hundreds of search team members joining the fray. The attacking monsters barely held out before being driven back by the combined efforts of everyone. Those who were unable to retreat, or were abandoned, were naturally slaughtered in the relentless onslaught. When the last mutant was hacked to death by 2 search team members, the battle before the Wall of Ashes came to an end. The ground before the wall of ashes was littered with corpses, the vast majority of them the bloody remains of monsters, though among the vast piles of dead monsters, there were also the occasional corpses of unfortunate humans. As the battle ended, Liu Ming slowly gave his orders. Can you count the casualties? Ma Jun, I'll leave the collection of offerings to you. The setting sun shone a bloody red, and the evening glow itself was stained red. Looking at the sky, which seemed shrouded in a bloody mist, Liu Ming spoke with a solemn expression. Gargoyles, clay golems, gather the corpses of all monsters above rank D. If memory serves, even more horrific disasters are about to unfold. That hazy bloody mist wasn't an illusion, but a foreshadowing of a real disaster. A blood moon crosses the sky, the stars dim, all is silent, and demons emerge, the 16 words that sum up the disaster. A blood red full moon will rise, obscuring even the brilliance of the moon, stars, and even the sun. Plants that rely on sunlight for growth will silently mutate and evolve in the absence of the sun's radiance. It's proven that even without sunlight, plants can thrive on the blood moon's radiance, and even thrive even better. Tomatoes that normally grow only the size of a fist might grow to the size of a human head. However, when picking tomatoes, beware of these seemingly harmless inert plants. They might suddenly open their mouths and even swing their roots at you. Indeed, the blood moon's aura can make all plants potentially aggressive. Fortunately, the rate of attack is low, otherwise humanity might not survive the first few years of the apocalypse. With this in mind, Liu Ming took a deep breath, silently turned, and leaped down the wall of ash. He pulled out a mysterious photo of monster corpse from his pocket and headed for the 4-color altar in the ticket hall. The corpse of the A-rank demon, the 4-eyed thorn demon, was sealed there. It was time to equip himself with a few more cards, to prepare for the greater crisis to come. Sacrifice. Liu Ming whispered at the altar. The priestess slowly emerged above the altar, looked at him, and smiled. Mortal, I sense joy in the air. It seems you've received some remarkable offering. Offer your sacrifice. Liu Ming nodded calmly. Without further ado, he simply took out all the offerings he had, instantly filling the entire altar and half the ticket hall. That's a lot, but it's not enough to rejoice the altar. Is there anything else you haven't taken out? The priestess asked with a chuckle. Your perception is truly sharp. And this? Liu Ming immediately retrieved the corpse of the 4-eyed thorn demon. Once the enormous corpse was removed, it instantly filled up a small portion of the ticket hall. What a remarkable haul. The priestess' voice was filled with a hint of unmistakable excitement. The priestess pointed her staff at the corpse of the 4-eyed thorn demon, and elaborated on the origins of the offering. This is currently considered a top-tier offering, an ancient demonic mercenary. Embodied within it is a matrix of the evil god's massive permanent spatial beacon patterns, enabling these demonic mercenaries to traverse the numerous barriers of planes and time, traveling to various worlds, to carry out their dirty mercenary business. Mortal, I suggest you sacrifice this veteran, low-level demonic mercenary alone. I think you'll reap unexpected rewards. The priestess's individual sacrifices never failed him, and Liu Ming made his decision without further hesitation. Then let's do it alone. The priestess smiled with satisfaction, as if gratified by Liu Ming's trust and decisiveness. Then, she swung her silver staff into the air, sending countless beams of light and starlight pouring down from the void like moonlight and starlight showering the human world at night. These countless beams instantly enveloped the enormous corpse of the 4-eyed thorn demon. Under the invisible force of the beam, the demon's body gradually became translucent. Stars rose from it, then flew into the air like fluttering butterflies, disappearing one by one into the void. As the demon's body became completely transparent and the last few clusters of stars vanished into the void, a white cocoon of light gradually formed in the air. Liu Ming didn't rush to see what the first divine grace was, instead asking the female priest to continue the sacrifice. Over an hour later, the entire ticket hall, containing dozens of offerings of at least top-tier D-rank monsters, had completely vanished, replaced by 20 or 30 balls of divine grace light. Liu Ming smiled as he gazed at these balls of divine grace. Although he still didn't know the specific effects of each divine grace, at least the amount he had received was more than enough to satisfy him. Liu Ming reached out for the first divine grace. he naturally wouldn't forget it, but it had cost him an entire A rank 4-eyed thorn demon a sacrifice to obtain it. This was the most precious and top level sacrifice he had ever obtained, and he had reason to believe that it was definitely extraordinary. Chapter 209 Dimensional Mercenaries, Time and Space Beacon. After a long while, when Liu Ming withdrew his hand from the first ball of divine grace, his expression was strange, shifting several times in an instant. Emotions mixed in it, ecstasy, shock, confusion, and so on. I never expected it to be this kind of thing. Liu Ming had never dreamed that he would obtain something almost exclusively legendary, the mercenary certificate. As the name suggests, this divine grace is naturally related to mercenaries. The mercenary certificate, special item, divine creation. Fusing it will transform you into a walker who traverses the ends of time and space, a hunter at the edge of the world in the universe. Any contract summons can leverage your power to fulfill the wishes of your employer. Yes, you are a dimensional mercenary, traversing time, space, and planes. In the past 10 years, Liu Ming had only heard of this item once. It was said to allow humans to traverse countless worlds like demonic mercenaries, but he had never heard of anyone possessing it. It existed almost solely in legend. But now, Liu Ming could say with certainty that this was no legend, for it had appeared before him. Would you like to fuse the mercenary certificate? This is a magical one-time item. Once used, it permanently binds the host to its owner, and nothing can separate it except death. A voice suddenly appeared in Liu Ming's mind. Without further consideration, Liu Ming chose to fuse it. The value of this divine gift, if utilized, would undoubtedly yield immeasurable benefits, a priceless treasure for Liu Ming, who desperately needed power. The dangers of traversing the myriad worlds pale in comparison to the immense benefits. In this global apocalypse, even doing nothing carries immense danger at all times. Since it's also dangerous, why not give it a try? Fuse? Liu Ming muttered silently. Then the voice echoed again. Mercenary certificate fusion begins. Merging souls, flesh, and intelligent beings. Merging the root of soul laws. Fusion successful. Searching the endless world for faith and willpower to automatically generate mercenary missions. The initial mercenary mission has been generated. Host, please begin selecting a mercenary mission as soon as possible. If you haven't completed your selection before the mission disappears, the next one will be generated 6 months after the initial mission disappears. After hearing the mysterious voice and the so-called mercenary missions appear before him, Liu Ming was stunned. After a full 3 seconds, he yelled, "What a trap!" Without time to think, he quickly gathered up all the divine grace he had just received and looked at the several so-called mercenary missions that had just formed. These mercenary missions floated in the air before him like glowing scrolls, but the light on the scrolls was rapidly fading, and it seemed they would soon disappear. Liu Ming estimated that when the light on the scrolls completely disappeared, the mercenary missions recorded on the weary scroll would also disappear completely. The next one would be 6 months later, and he absolutely couldn't wait. As for the so-called mercenary missions, they were no strangers to him. Hadn't the underage dwarf warrior Garland come to his world as a contracted mercenary to serve him? The missions before him this time were as follows. 1. Travel to the world of Fekarendon to help Emerald, a follower of the Cult of the Night, realize his ambition to become an archbishop. Commission, 1 Night Diamond, a crystal imbued with powerful magical energy, many times more powerful than a magic crystal. Liu Ming dismissed the mission with a single glance. Helping a cult member become an archbishop was clearly a time-consuming and labor-intensive task, something he wasn't foolish enough to undertake, and he didn't have the time to. Zeravan, one of the hundreds of millions of descendants of the insect realm's Neoan Lord, Queen Atithrant, sought the assistance of a powerful warrior to successfully complete the upcoming Neoan Prince trial. Commission, 3 level 4 insect crystals. Upon seeing the words 4th level insect crystal, Liu Ming's heart suddenly raced. The 4th level mentioned here wasn't much different from the 2nd or 3rd level of his own rank, and couldn't even compare to a true 4th level transcendent insect crystal. Insect crystals were the lifeblood of the Zerg, and they were incredibly valuable. Even if a 4th level insect crystal were sacrificed, its rank would undoubtedly be far higher than the A level 4-eyed thorn devil he had just sacrificed. However, he reluctantly gave up on the task. A 4th level insect crystal commission was definitely not something he could complete right now. Even if he could eventually complete it, it would undoubtedly take a long time. Definitely not just a few days or even weeks. If he calculated the time required, based on his own abilities, it would take at least years. Why would he even consider such a task? He immediately turned his attention to the 3rd mercenary task 3. The oasis where Aerons resides is under a dual threat from the Corruption clan and the Erosion clan. Her parents have also disappeared during a reconnaissance mission. Find clues to Aerons' parents' disappearance or find the commission, or the secret method for cultivating the knight's bloodline left behind by them. Liu Ming had initially planned to brush off this mission, but when he realized it was the last one and there were no more hires, he began to carefully analyze the pros and cons of the final one. Of the 3, this one was undoubtedly the easiest to complete, as the mission description explicitly stated that finding her parents wasn't necessary, even finding clues would count. This gave him a significant chance of achieving the mission. Perhaps this person named Aerons' parents had long since passed away, and simply finding evidence of their tragic death would complete the mission. The final commission reward, however, was of secondary importance. For someone about to embark on an exploration of other worlds, that small commission was of little concern. Transmigrating to another world was already a rewarding journey. If handled well, it wasn't impossible to reap a commission worth 10 or 100 times the original amount. Choose the 3rd mission. Finally, Liu Ming slowly reached for the leather scroll representing the 3rd mission. As soon as the scroll touched Liu Ming's fingers, it burst into a dazzling light, like a blazing fireball. As the fireball burned, black traces vaguely appeared around it. As the flames of the fireball grew larger, those black traces also merged one after another, gradually turning into wide black cracks. These cracks appeared in front of Liu Ming and moved closer to the center, squeezing out a channel. Whoosh! A strong suction force came from the channel formed by the black cracks. Before Liu Ming could react, he was sucked in by the strong suction of the cracks. This was a force that almost made Liu Ming completely irresistible. When Liu Ming was about to be sucked into the black crack, the mysterious voice sounded again. The Star Elm beacon is locked. The return to the time and space imprint record is completed. The time and space channel is anchored successfully. The host dimension mercenary Liu Ming. The first employment mission officially begins. Mercenaries are dispatched. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 210, Above the Oasis, on the top of the clouds. After Liu Ming passed through a dark, lightless passage, as if silent from eternity, a wave of dizziness washed over him. Then, he emerged from the 4-color altar into a completely unfamiliar scene. He was still within the pitch black passage, not yet out, but the exit was just ahead, illuminated by a glimmer of light. What is this? Liu Ming clenched his right hand into a fist, suddenly shocked and exclaiming. His shock wasn't the fact that he had just passed through a spatial tunnel. After all, in the past 10 years, he had been accustomed to them. Many high-level missions within the Demon Hunting Guild required opening a spatial tunnel to reach another dimension. He had lost count of how many times he had walked through such a dark passage. What truly shocked him, almost to the point of barely controlling his voice, was that his power, which ordinary people considered almost godlike and terrifying, vanished without a trace the moment he passed through the spatial tunnel. At this point, he was only slightly stronger than he had been when the catastrophe struck. All his extraordinary powers had vanished. Because the host is too weak to resist the rejection of the world's source energy, to help the host quickly adapt to the rules of this world, supernatural powers have been automatically and completely blocked. The mysterious voice suddenly echoed in Liu Ming's mind again. What? A complete power block? Doesn't this mean he's become an ordinary dimensional mercenary? Is this a joke? Is this a joke, or is he helping the employer complete their mission? Liu Ming was furious. Can you remove the block on my power? Liu Ming finally took a deep breath and decided to ask it calmly. The mysterious voice slowly replied, of course you can. In fact, if the host unleashes all his strength, the block will automatically be lifted. However, the world's rules will reject the host's extraordinary powers, which are incompatible with the world's source energy. At the very least, the host will be pulled back into the spatial channel and expelled, or at worst, the host will be crushed to dust by the forces of the world's rules. It would have been better if the voice hadn't replied. Once it did, Liu Ming's anger intensified. In other words, he had arrived in an unknown and dangerous world, armed with strength comparable to that of an ordinary person, as a mercenary living on the brink of death. And even if he was forced to release the power, he might face a terrifying backlash of immediate death. Are you trying to trick me into death, so you can inherit my 3 dragon pets and my magical camera? Liu Ming cursed inwardly. But then he thought again. Now that he was already here, he had to go out and take a look. With his mind made up, Liu Ming asked no more questions. He walked briskly out of the spatial tunnel and leaped down from the illuminated entrance. Miserens, look, something really fell. Liu Ming had just leaped out of the spatial tunnel when he heard a completely incomprehensible conversation and a scream. Although he couldn't understand the speaker's language, his ability to communicate with all things allowed him to understand the meaning of the person before him. Miserens, he said. Is she referring to the girl in front of him? Is she the one who summoned him? Liu Ming observed the first 2 people he saw, their language unknown to him. He immediately used his telepathic ability to speak directly into their minds, asking, "Summoner, are you summoning the warrior's aid from the shadows?" "Yes, sir." Errands, who had been wondering if the bearded, rugged man before him lacked the blood of a knight or hunter, or the ability to sense power fluctuations, suddenly shouted excitedly in response. This voice reached directly into his heart. What did it mean? It meant that the mysterious man before him was most likely a scholar of the Oasis's most prestigious profession. Only scholars who mastered various mystical powers could directly transmit their thoughts to the depths of their subjects. Sir, can you remove your foot from me?" A voice, somewhat gnashing, suddenly appeared at Liu Ming's feet. Liu Ming looked down, and then, realizing that he had stepped on a figure's face, since leaping down from the spatial tunnel, it seemed that the scream just now was most likely the cry of this person being trampled. Liu Ming wordlessly moved his foot away, and began to assess the 2 men before him. Although his supernatural powers were temporarily suppressed by the mysterious force, Liu Ming's eyes and perception could still discern their strengths. The young man he had stepped on was probably only at the level of an E level, equivalent to a beginner's career, while the hired girl named Derens was simply an ordinary person. Although her physique was agile and close to human limits, she was essentially an ordinary person, devoid of any supernatural power. Is this the power level of this world? If it was only this level, then his first mission seemed almost certain to succeed. Liu Ming pondered. Some time passed, and when Liu Ming emerged from the room he had just arrived in, his expression was grim. After a conversation, Liu Ming finally understood his surroundings and his employer's situation. He had undoubtedly arrived in another time and space, one far more distant than the Crystal Cave secret realm. And the area he was in was, in a true sense, the only safe place in the entire world, the Cloud Top Oasis. Hundreds of years ago, the apocalypse arrived, and the world's end arrived. Monsters like the corrupted, the eroded, and the goblins emerged. All human space was gradually squeezed from the vast continent to the last remaining haven of humanity, the Cloud Top Oasis, a legendary city atop the holy White Mercer Plateau. These terrifying monsters brought not only endless slaughter, but also the withering of all life. They greedily sucked away the world's source energy, leaving virtually no vegetation anywhere they conquered, gradually transforming it into a dead zone. Those areas that managed to survive the countless monsters were collectively known as oases of life. These oases fell one after another to the onslaught of terrifying monsters, leaving only this one oasis at the edge of the world, atop Cloud Top. Over the past century, humanity struggled to thrive on the plateau, gradually recovering some of its vitality. Initially a few million survivors, the population gradually grew to tens of millions, approaching nearly 100 million. This oasis of life spans nearly 1/3 of the entire holy White Mercer Plateau. The surviving oasis dwellers have gradually established 19 major cities and 87 important towns within the Cloud Top Oasis. Aaron's family resides in one of these 87 towns, Jerry Town. Founded by the scholar Jerry, this town, located in the southwest of the oasis, bears his name, a symbol of his eternal protection of this pure land. He is a prominent figure close to the astronomical scholars. Indeed, he established Jerry Town at the dawn of the apocalypse, over 100 years having passed since then. He is nearly 150 years old. As a scholar close to the astronomical scholars, Jerry's lifespan is far longer than that of ordinary people. 150 years is only half of his long lifespan. All of this is narrated by Aaron's and his attendant, Jerina. Chapter 211, Half Mountain Manor, Rose Road. In the important town of Jerry, with a population of 200,000 to 300,000 and a scale comparable to that of a modern city, Aaron's was a prominent figure. However, this notion of prominence needed to be punctuated by the phrase once upon a time. Her father, one of the two targets in Liu Ming's mission, was a Grand Knight, Kuel, whose status in Jerry was second only to that of the Grand Scholar. The hundreds of major cities and towns throughout the Cloud Top Oasis were governed and protected by the Supreme Archon, governed by the Council of Elders. The Supreme Archon, in turn, established numerous governing councils within each major city. Aaron's father, Grand Knight Kuel, was one of the 8 members of the Jerry Governing Council. These 8 individuals, collectively known as the 8 Archons, led by Grand Archon Jerry, represented the 8 most prominent figures in Jerry. As the only daughter of Archon Kuel and Deputy Captain Semiv of the town's security forces, Aaron's status was undoubtedly prominent. However, these illustrious histories are rapidly vanishing. Great Knight Kevel and his wife, Aaron's mother, the top hunter Semiv, have all disappeared, practically presumed dead. Aaron's alone, clinging to the belief that his powerful father and mother are still alive, even praying day and night to an inherited ancestral bronze Horcrux, hoping to find clues to his parents' whereabouts. Ancestral bronze Horcruxes are similar to ancestral tablets, shrines, and statues in this world, commonly used for ancestral worship and prayers. While most prayers and wishes fail, Aaron succeeds, using his faith and energy to summon Liu Ming, a rookie dimensional mercenary on his first mission, from the depths of time and space. However, none of this matters. What matters is the composition of power in this world, which makes Liu realize that his choice of what he thought was the easiest mercenary mission might have been a mistake. Now, this mission, mistakenly thought to be the simplest, is so difficult that it almost fills Liu Ming with a deep sense of powerlessness. As mentioned before, Aaron's father was a great knight. In this world, the Grand Knight, one of only 8 guardians of a major town, a figure worthy of being called the Master of a region, barely qualifies as a transcendental professional who has reached the upper echelons of the power hierarchy. Above the Grand Knight are the Sky Knight, the Grand Knight of the Holy Throne, and the legendary Night King, the only one in the entire Cloud Top Oasis. The 3 stand at vastly different levels of power. Not to mention the Grand Knight, even the Associate Knight has practically reached the level of an F-rank evolutionary. As for the Squire Guard Jerina, the young man who had just completed his formal knight training certification, he possesses the power of an E-rank evolutionary. Common sense would dictate that a more senior full knight would have at least the power of a D-rank evolutionary. Liu Ming tragically realized that, judging solely by his power level, without factoring in his true strength, he was barely a junior knight, above a full knight. Even if he unleashed all his trump cards, including his 3 dragon pets, the holy fire demon Garlem, he could only manage a single intermediate knight at best. An intermediate knight is at least comparable to a first tier S-rank evolutionary. This left Liu Ming feeling incredibly frustrated. Not to mention that his powers were now completely sealed. Even if they were unsealed, they would be completely useless in the current situation. After all, the missing person he was searching for was a Grand Knight, even one above the Advanced Knight, and a top tier hunter. It's worth noting that this world's supernatural powers primarily consist of 3 categories: knights empowered by bloodline power, hunters skilled in weapon manipulation through exceptional perception, and scholars mastering mystical powers. These 3 types of supernatural beings were the true reason why Cloud Top Oasis remained resilient amidst countless monsters. However, his employer clearly hadn't inherited her parents' exceptional talent. At nearly 16, she was still a Squire Knight and a Squire Hunter. Squire Knights, Squire hunters and apprentice scholars were novice apprentices who hadn't yet awakened their supernatural powers and were still in the exploratory stages of transcendence. While their powers approached the human limit to some extent, they were still far from true supernatural beings. Even if one reaches the limits of humanity without awakening transcendental powers, one lacks the ability to even leave the oasis alone or battle even the most common corruption and erosion monsters. One must remain within the oasis, sheltered by transcendence. In this world, transcendents are a common part of everyday life for all residents. While there are only a few million transcendents compared to the population of over 60 million, a relatively small proportion, nearly everyone, like errands, attendants, and apprentices, is one. In other words, almost everyone is on the path to transcendence. Some go further, achieving transcendental awakening, while the vast majority, after failing to awaken, become ordinary mortals. Perhaps in my current state, I wouldn't even be able to defeat a few of this world's ordinary natives. Liu Ming looked up at the seemingly tangible azure sky, his heart aching. The reason this place is called the Cloud Top Oasis is naturally related to the clouds. While the St. White Mercer Plateau isn't the highest plateau on the infinite continent, it is undoubtedly the most foggy. The entire plateau seemed enveloped by a vast cloud, and Liu Ming was standing at the site of the Eren's family's ancestral estate, Kuel Hillside Manor. Kuel had inherited the estate from her grandfather, the elder Kuel, her father. While Kuel's extraordinary spiritual talent was inferior to his son's, and he remained a mediocre junior knight throughout his life, his business acumen was immense, accumulating a vast fortune for his descendants. Grand Knight Kuel was also a successful successor. Simply by virtue of his positions as Archon and Grand Knight, he had expanded the estate's size and influence many times over. Today, Kuel Hillside Manor is surrounded by tens of thousands of residents and has become a vital economic hub for the entire town of Jerry. Liu Ming, carrying the token given by Eren's, headed straight for the heart of the estate, the ancestral home of the Eren's family, the site of the central manor. The moment he left the central manor, he felt as if he had entered a bizarre world merging the Middle Ages and the 19th century. Beyond the central manor's gates, a long commercial street snaked along the mountain. A gentle descent led directly into the heart of the important town of Jerry, where both the city hall and the executive council were located. This street practically encircled Rose Mountain, with a vibrant array of houses perched on the mountainside. Seen from afar at the foot of the mountain, Rose Mountain possessed a wondrous beauty. Along the wide street, known as the Rose Road, knights on steeds significantly taller and stronger than ordinary horses, along with sturdy passers-by carrying muskets or cannons, brushed past Liu Ming. Birds, the size of nightingales, but more agile and nimble, darted through the crowds without ever striking a single soul. These birds were the means of communication in this world, creatures known as carrier birds. They served a similar purpose to homing pigeons, but were far more effective due to their immense speed and fluent understanding of human language, possessing a language talent even greater than that of parrots. Under special circumstances, even without paper, they can deliver simple messages to their masters simply by oral communication. It's said that mysterious scholars can train falcons to act as messengers, which are faster and more ferocious than messengers, and can even fight monsters. Hunters can also train the unique creatures of the Holy White Mercer Plateau, the cloud-crowned hawk, to fight as companions. And the knight's special mounts, the magic riders, are all powerful beasts of war. Interesting place. Looking at the knights wearing half breastplates or full body plate armor, the hunters walking hurriedly in leather armor, the messengers, and the buildings that were so different from the architectural style of Earth. Liu Ming suddenly narrowed his eyes and sighed softly. Chapter 212, Azure Coin, Jet Gun. Liu Ming felt the dozens of hard objects in his jacket pocket, nodded in satisfaction, and headed straight for the destination he had just learned. If one could see through the obstruction of clothing, one could see the 30 or 40 smooth azure blue coins quietly nestled in his pocket. This was one of the 4 common currencies in Genting Oasis, and the one in his pocket was the highest denomination of Genting Oasis's 4. The currencies in this world, from highest to lowest, were Genting coins, Oasis coins, white coins, and grey coins, each denomination increasing in tenfold. In other words, one genting coin in his pocket was worth 1,000 grey coins, and just 3 or 2 grey coins could cover a full meal. This was the first payment from his employer, and Liu Ming decided to use it to equip himself. It wasn't that Liu Ming had the nerve to demand payment when he hadn't done anything yet, but rather that his current strength was utterly weak. If it weren't for his telepathic transmission, which had tricked his employer, Errands, into believing he was a special scholar possessing mystical powers, he would have been a very good person. On this mission, it wasn't impossible for him to be caught as a fraud. However, he knew full well that he wasn't much of a scholar. With his supernatural powers sealed, he wasn't much stronger than an ordinary person. Fortunately, telepathy, a subtle, non-combat focused supernatural power, hadn't been sealed, otherwise communication would have been a problem. His 3 dragon pets were gone, and even the holy fire demonic puppet he carried with him lay motionless, like a dead object after being sealed. However, Liu Ming could sense that the holy fire demonic puppet had only fallen into a state of voluntary stagnation to resist the rejection of the world's rules, not that it had become inanimate. If he forcibly summoned it, the holy fire demonic puppet could instantly unleash its ultimate power and break free. However, exposing his supernatural powers, which didn't belong to this world, would have unpredictable consequences. He would never reveal his true strength unless it was a matter of life and death. Even if he needed to display his strength, he would only use power that complied with the rules of this world. That was why he wanted to use this money to equip himself. Otherwise, without external help, his strength would likely remain relegated to the realm of ordinary people for a long time. In this case, not only would he not be able to complete his mission, but even his safety would be completely unsafe. Once his power was unleashed, even if he managed to resist the rejection of the rules, he would definitely not be able to remain in this world. This journey across the plains would be fruitless. He would integrate into this world, mastering its immense power, and wait until his various extraordinary powers completely merged with the source energy of this world, to be considered assimilated by the world. Ultimately, he would complete his mission and return to Earth. This was his plan. Saumali Weapon Shop. This was Liu Ming's destination, after leaving the central manor. Among the hundreds of shops, large and small, on Rose Road in the Mid-Mountain Manor, this shop was renowned for its production of hunter weapons, including various bows, crossbows, and muskets. Liu Ming carried dozens of Yunding coins precisely to come here and obtain his first weapon from this world, a hunter firearm. Watching the pedestrians passing by, carrying heavy caliber, musket-like weapons, Liu Ming felt a surge of anticipation for these powerful weapons, described by Errands as capable of splitting mountains and shattering rocks. Entering the spacious shop, which spanned nearly 1,000 square meters, the first thing that caught Liu Ming's eye was the copper-cast, iron-molded walls. These walls divided the entire shop into compartments, each with 3 walls. Extending from each wall were upward curving claw-like racks, upon which were displayed various types of weapons. As Liu Ming entered, a shop assistant approached him and inquired. Although the man's language was more obscure than bad talk, he could still discern the general meaning. His nephew was asking for help, perhaps trying to sell him something. "I need weapons," Liu Ming said, unable to speak common. However, since telepathy was recognized as a skill reserved for occultists in this world, he didn't bother to disguise it, and simply replied telepathically, "Scholar." As expected, the clerk exclaimed in a trembling voice. His weapon shop usually only attracted squire-level hunters or regular hunters. After all, the weapons he stocked were already outdated for beginners and intermediate hunters, and even less so for advanced hunters. Who could have imagined that a mysterious, powerful, and revered scholar would appear in his shop today? This mysterious voice, penetrating deep into his heart, was undoubtedly the power of the scholar. Seeing the man completely stunned by his telepathic transmission, his expression still dazed and stunned for a moment, Liu Ming impatiently said again, "Weapons. Respected scholar, please forgive my impoliteness. It's just that our shop rarely sees scholars, so I'm surprised and deeply honored by your sudden visit. Please allow me to introduce our weapons. We primarily sell hunter weapons and are renowned for our craftsmanship in hot weapons. We also have considerable expertise in cold weaponry, meeting the urgent weapon needs of hunters experiencing the initial transcendental awakening. What type and price range do you require? The clerk asked, carefully observing Liu Ming's expression. Assessing a customer's financial resources before recommending appropriate weapons is crucial, lest the entire store's inventory be made public and copied by competitors. This is one of the clerk's primary responsibilities. Even if the client is a formidable scholar, it's said that lower level scholars, those diligent students who simply follow their instructor's lead, are often quite poor, and they need to be cautious. I need powerful weapons. Liu Ming, understanding the other party's intention, snatched 3 azure coins from his pocket with his index and middle fingers, and tossed them into the air. Then, just before the coins hit the ground, he quickly opened his palm and grasped them tightly. Liu Ming could clearly see the clerk's eyes fluttering the moment the azure coins appeared. This was the cloud top coin, representing more than just the highest denomination currency. It also symbolized status and position. The clerk was mentally roaring. Just like the status of gold in ancient times, while it was officially recognized as currency, expecting ordinary people to trade with gold was a pipe dream. Ordinary people still use the smallest copper coins for equivalent exchange. Using small silver coins was considered a sign of wealth. This was why the clerk's reaction to the azure cloud top coin was so dramatic. If before, he had looked at Liu Ming with the awe of a mystic, now he was looking at a coin with the same enthusiasm he would have. Sir, do you need firearms or cold weapons? The clerk asked, suppressing his excitement. Firearms. At this moment, the fastest way to improve one's strength was undoubtedly with firearms. Sir, please follow me. The clerk then led Liu Ming to one of the innermost compartments, pointing to the dazzling array of weapons hanging on the wall. Our shop uses a jet-like manufacturing process, and all firearms with extremely strong penetrating power here. Jet-like bullets. Liu Ming was curious about the term. Chapter 213. First test of firearms, Unleashing the Corrupted Beast, Part 1. Cloud top coin is the official name for this currency, while the public generally refers to it as azure coin, because the azure colored coins are blended with precious and rare blue gold during their production. Oasis coins are also blended with green silver, 2 precious metals unique to this world. Because of the unique nature of these 2 currencies, they are rarely found in the hands of ordinary people. Just as most people in ancient times used copper coins as currency, ordinary people might have access to small silver, but rarely to gold, the king of currencies. Even gold is officially recognized as a hard currency. Inside the armory, filled with the scent of gunpowder and metal, the clerk seemed to sense the question in Liu Ming's tone. He looked away from the cloud top coin in Liu Ming's hand, and looked at him with a hint of confusion. Jet projectiles, a crucial component of jet weapon technology, are an innovative weapon technology invented and developed by scholars. Logically, a true scholar would understand this better than a mere clerk. So why would this customer, seemingly a scholar, have such doubts about it? However, the clerk suppressed his doubts and chose to honestly answer the customer's questions. After all, experience had taught him that scholars were often known for their erratic tempers. If he displeased them, he might not be able to get past the boss. He knew full well how the owner of their Soma weaponry had built his fortune. 6 months ago, Soma Weaponry was a small unpopular weapons shop on Rose Road in Mid-Levels Manor. Far from the industry-renowned status it now enjoys throughout the city of Jerry. Ultimately, its current status stemmed from Soma, the owner, who had seized the initiative in the revolution in weaponry, centered around jet technology. Master craftsman Soma's brothers were members of Jerry's Scholars Castle. When the jet technology of weaponry spread from the Saint Scholars Tower in the distant oasis city of Cloud Top, the scholars of Jerry's Scholars Castle were the first to encounter this innovative technique. It was they who popularized it, encouraging weaponsmiths to innovate further in their own practice, thus driving the craft's development and advancement. As the brother of a mid-level scholar, Soma became a direct beneficiary of this technology. So, as everyone knows, before the advent of jet stream weapon technology, the vast majority of firearms effective against subadult and above corrosive races use the gunpowder explosion process. Because this process uses the impact force generated by the gunpowder explosion to propel the bullet, it requires extremely high standards for the type of gunpowder and the toughness and durability of the barrel. Ordinary metal barrels and chambers simply cannot withstand the tremendous impact generated by the gunpowder explosion process. Nowadays, the demand for weapons among those who have just entered the transcendental stage is gradually being replaced by the jet stream weapon process, which requires far less material than firearms produced by the gunpowder explosion process. Of course, the demand for higher level weapons still primarily relies on the gunpowder explosion process. After all, high energy gunpowders like black crystal gunpowder, silver sand gunpowder, and golden flow gunpowder can provide far greater, stronger, and more powerful power than the jet stream process. Currently, the limit of jet type weapons is penetrating the defensive hard shells and stratum corneum of medium level corrosive species. Their damage to higher level creatures pales in comparison. Weapons crafted using the secret gunpowder explosion process can even pose a lethal threat to forbidden level ancient creatures. After asking a few more questions, Liu Ming roughly understood the origins of these so-called jet-type weapons. Firearms in this world still utilize the same principle as ancient flintlocks, which ignite gunpowder and eject iron sand. However, the flint that ignites the gunpowder is replaced by a component called a flint wheel, and the firearm's power is expected to be far greater than that of ordinary muskets. Jet-type weapons, on the other hand, use a mechanism that uses the explosive force of the gunpowder to draw in air and then eject it, creating a more powerful force to propel the projectile. The special bullets in these weapons, called jet bullets, can even produce a secondary jet after firing, increasing their velocity and destructive power. Simply put, jet-type bullet technology uses a jet cartridge composed of microscopic airflow impellers as the propulsion force to launch the projectile and injure the enemy. Every time the trigger is pulled, the air impeller draws in air and expels it. This process, known as intake and ejection, ejects the bullet. The impeller is still propelled by gunpowder, but compared to a bullet propelled solely by gunpowder, this mechanism, which relies on gunpowder to propel the impeller, requires less gunpowder. Firearms manufactured using the explosive process use specialized gunpowder as the driving force to activate the firing mechanism, ejecting the metal projectile. This type of weapon has extremely high gunpowder requirements. Because the impact force of this world's gunpowder is far greater than that of black powder, the gun body materials used are also far more powerful than ordinary metals. This world has even given rise to the special profession of secret gunpowder maker, which is said to have a high status. Can I try it? Liu Ming asked with a hint of curiosity, observing the incredibly rugged, large, and heavy firearm before him. Upon hearing this, the clerk looked at him with embarrassment. While weapons shops don't explicitly prohibit customers from trying out guns, it's rare for customers to personally test them. After all, the ammunition for a firearm of this exceptional level isn't cheap. The customer is usually provided with detailed specifications such as weapon power, rate of fire, and recoil. There's no such thing as a test fire. If the customer buys the weapon after testing it, it's fine. But if they don't, they'll be completely wiped out. It's no exaggeration to say that even 3 or 5 rounds of the custom-made ammunition for a firearm of this exceptional level can cost as much as a day's salary, a price they simply can't afford. This is especially true for the jet stream ammunition used in jet stream weapons, which are expensive because of the ammunition. Just as the clerk was racking his brains, trying to figure out how to politely and respectfully refuse the customer, a voice drifted over. Let him try it. The voice was full of energy, not young, but full of life. The clerk was surprised to hear, "Old man, boss." It was none other than Master Craftsman Sam, the owner of the Sam Arms and Smithy shop. He hadn't expected the owner, who rarely appeared in the shop for 10 days or even half a month, to appear here today without warning. In this weapons shop, there are at least 7 or 8 ordinary shop assistants like himself, if not 10. He is not one of them who attracts attention, no matter in terms of qualifications or abilities. The boss definitely did not come here for himself, so there is only one reason why he is here. It must be because of the guest in front of him who looks like a scholar. No, this must be a distinguished scholar, just like the boss's brother, the mysterious scholar who has lived in the scholar's castle for many years. Otherwise, why would the boss come out of the workshop? Thinking of this, the clerk was very excited. This is a scholar. According to the boss Soma's history of making a fortune, if he can successfully establish a relationship with him, there is no worry that he can open a shop of his own like the boss one day and recruit more than a dozen employees. Sir, my name is Ed. Let's test the gun now. Chapter 214. First test of firearms, Unleashing the Corrupted Beast, Part 2. With that, the shop assistant, who called himself Ed, laboriously removed a jet gun from the center row on the far left rack. The firearms of this world possessed a singular characteristic. They were enormous. Incredibly enormous. With barrels as thick as cannon barrels, not to mention their devastating impact on monsters. The sheer weight alone was beyond the reach of ordinary humans. At least the shop assistant before him, whose physique rivaled that of a bodybuilder, struggled to lift the weapon, let alone pull the trigger, and withstand the terrifying recoil. Sir, this is one of the original jet guns our shop developed when jet weapon technology first became popular. It weighs 65 TK, with a 29 TK barrel and a 36 TK cylinder. It has a capacity of 1,870 rounds, Ed explained, handing the jet gun to Liu Ming. The gun Ed handed Liu Ming was no smaller than a small caliber cannon, but by this world's definition, it was only a musket, firing jet bullets 2 fingers thick and palm length long. The magazine, capable of holding thousands of these massive projectiles, was a truly massive beast. The tick is the unit of measure in this world, roughly equivalent to 1.1 kilograms. The 36 tick cylinder, compared to the compact magazines Liu Ming knew, was undoubtedly a massive beast. Liu Ming narrowed his eyes as he took the firearm, anticipating its destructive power. The fist-width black muzzle gave Liu Ming a clear sense of the weapon's power. The trigger was identical to that of a familiar rifle, while the bolt had been replaced by a mechanism called a flintlock. This was a key-like component. Turning the flint wheel and then pulling the trigger created a rotational speed that ignited the gunpowder in the chamber. This then drew air through the turbine, creating a powerful force that propelled the bullet out of the chamber at great speed. Sir, please follow me. The shop assistant, Ed, didn't dare let Liu Ming test the gun in the shop. He was a master at demolishing houses. In the backyard of the shop stood a small weapons workshop. Alongside the stone wall stood several iron targets, pitted but still standing. Seeing the targets, Liu Ming knew what he had to do. He turned the flint wheel. A rapid whirring sound of wind emanated, instantly drawing a massive amount of air into the turbine. He pulled the trigger. Boom. A roar louder than a musket roared, followed by a tremendous, overwhelming force. Liu Ming's feet curled slightly, digging into the ground like a cat's paw, his shoulders firmly bracing against the gun handle to withstand the recoil. What is this? A gun? Liu Ming almost exclaimed in surprise. This kind of recoil was definitely not something any firearm he knew of could produce. A puff of dust instantly gathered, and the iron target 100 meters away also lost another piece in an instant, and a metal bullet shot into the iron target, firmly embedded in it. Sir, you have great strength. I didn't have time to tell you just now that the disadvantage of this gun is that the recoil is too large and the shock absorption effect is not good. Because this is our store's most primitive jet gun, the various designs are not perfect. Unless it is a hunter with special strength, few beginners will choose this jet gun, because the recoil is difficult to control, and if the recoil cannot be controlled, the design lacks precision. Seeing Liu Ming fire the shot without changing his expression, and showing no signs of being injured by the recoil, the already panicked clerk finally breathed a sigh of relief. The strength of scholars lies in the mystical powers they wield, not their physical strength. The recoil of this SOM-K0 jet gun could injure a transcendent hunter, let alone a scholar with limited strength. It's impossible not to worry about him getting hurt. Liu Ming was speechless upon hearing this. Firearms are typically used by hunters, and hunters, in this world's definition of transcendental strength, are considered relatively weak, only slightly stronger than scholars, and far inferior to the burly knights. However, considering the heavy weight of firearms and the recoil, that could easily kill a cow, even a hunter would need to be an extremely sturdy man, capable of easily carrying and lifting hundreds of kilograms. After struggling to remove the SOM-K0 from his shoulder, Liu Ming asked, "Are there any other improved models?" His strength had been enhanced to C rank. Although his various supernatural powers had been suppressed, his physical strength and speed had not decreased at all. Even if the recoil of this gun were twice as strong, it would not cause any harm. He was only dissatisfied with its accuracy and power. It was like firing a cannon, a completely indiscriminate attack, rather than a single target. It was difficult to hit an extremely fast enemy. In terms of destructive power, this gun was already comparable to many anti-material sniper rifles, but when it came to accuracy, 100 meters was probably the limit. Yes, of course, sir. We also have the SOM K1, K2, and K3 jet rifles, which are also very popular among extraordinary hunters. Ed then brought in 3 more jet rifles. Unlike the K0, the K1 was much bulkier and heavier, weighing 76 tick. Its effective range was only 50 or 60 meters longer than the K0, but its power was greater, and its recoil was comparable to the K0. The K2, on the other hand, was significantly lighter, weighing only 47 tick. While not as large in caliber as the previous two, its ammunition capacity and recoil were significantly improved. While its destructive power was reduced, its penetration and range were greatly improved, extending its effective range to 300 meters. The SOM K3 was one of the 2 most sophisticated jet rifles in the SOM weapon shop. Weighing 50 tick, it held an astonishing 2,000 rounds, and its destructive power was comparable to the K0, with penetration power half as strong as the K2. In the end, Liu Ming spent 56 Yunding coins to acquire the ultimate weapon, the SOM K3. This was a special price secured by the owner, SOM. Otherwise, it would have cost half as much. Strapping the jet gun, housed in a custom leather holster, and a generous bag of thousands of jet bullets, Liu Ming headed straight for Yunding Mountain Villa. According to Ed and the shop owner, SOM, the SOM K1 and K2 are sufficient for the weapons of a transcendental quasi-hunter, while the K3 is a jet gun that can meet the needs of a full-fledged hunter. However, the owner's ultimate SOM K4 is elusive, and is said to be reserved for beginner hunters and above. In terms of power, a full-fledged knight is roughly equivalent to a first-tier C-rank melee professional, and a hunter is not far behind. In other words, once one fully masters this weapon, even if their transcendental abilities are suppressed, they can still unleash the power of a C-rank. For beginners, their power is roughly equivalent to that of a B-rank or even A-rank professional. This is barely enough to protect themselves. Liu Ming had just left the SOM weapon shop when the crowd on the street suddenly erupted in commotion. A group of riders on tall magical cavalry approached Liu Ming from the direction of the mountainside manor. Amidst the group, a dozen or so towering horses pulled rows of massive iron cages. The commotion began around these cages. "Is that a rot beast?" A young man beside Liu Ming, also carrying a musket and wearing leather armor, asked his companion. The musket he carried was no match for Liu Ming's in both size and caliber. It was clearly just an ordinary firearm used by a retainer hunter. "Yes, it's the Black Fang and Coiled Claw Jackal." It's said that the Meadow family, who control the mountainside manor at Kuel, is obligated to provide rot beast research to the scholar's castle every quarter, another older hunter replied. However, the caliber of the musket carried by this hunter was significantly lower than Liu Ming's, so he looked at Liu Ming with undisguised awe, fully demonstrating the principle that caliber represents strength. Scholars are such strange people, actually demanding a disgusting creature like the corrupted beasts. The young hunter looked puzzled. Almost everyone in the oasis deeply detested the corrupted. Upon hearing this, the older hunter's expression darkened, and he sternly rebuked, "Shut up. Without the anti-venom potion, developed by the scholars, how can you possibly stand up to the corrupted beasts without fear of their poison?" The young hunter immediately fell silent. The older hunter glanced at Liu Ming apologetically, hinting that his companion had spoken out of turn. Liu Ming simply nodded, indicating that it was alright. What the people of this world thought of the so-called scholars was none of his business. At best, they were a special group whose primary job was research, not something he could truly respect. Ah! A sudden, shrill scream erupted from the riders. The crowd watching the corrupted beasts grew even more agitated. Liu Ming looked toward the center of the commotion. He saw that, at some point, several bars of an iron cage had been corroded away. An ugly wolf-like creature, stronger than a calf, seized the opportunity to sprint out of the gap. Suddenly, it lunged and bit the neck of the first rider to spot it near the cage. The screams of agony came from the rider. Liu Ming was momentarily stunned by the lightning-fast attack. E-class speed. The scent of blood instantly permeated the air, and the other caged rot beasts, revitalized by the scent, leaped up and down, attempting to break free. However, aside from the 5 or 6 rot beasts in the corroded cage, the bars of the other cages remained firmly contained. One of these beasts darted directly in Liu Ming's direction, a scene that left the onlookers sweating for him. While the black fang and coiled claw wolf was one of the most common semi-adult rot beasts in the restricted area outside Jerrytown, its commonness didn't necessarily make it easy to deal with. Precisely because of its difficulty, scholars requested that the Banshan Manor provide live specimens of this decaying beast to study its weaknesses. Even experienced squire hunters struggled to deal with this terrifying and cunning monster. Bang! Following the blast of a gunshot, the black fang and coiled claw wolf, whose stench was nearly reaching Liu Ming's nostrils, instantly transformed into a pile of rotting flesh. Chapter 215 Corrosion Protocol. Armor Team. After a resounding roar, like spring thunder and the crash of falling rocks, Liu Ming's firearm remained in its original state, a wisp of smoke billowing from the muzzle. Despite Liu Ming's calm demeanor, the sight of him single-handedly slaying the rotten beast had already left many faces in shock. Just as Liu Ming had slain the beast and was about to withdraw, a throbbing sensation from the crimson hand sent shockwaves through his heart. The crimson hand's power surged, struggling to break free, as if a mysterious substance within the rotten beast's shattered remains was drawing it madly. Even the seal surrounding the mysterious voice seemed to momentarily loosen amidst the crimson hand's throbbing power. Horrified, Liu Ming quickly restrained the crimson hand's impatience. His mission had only just begun. He did not want to be ostracized by the world's rules, or even crushed to dust. Under Liu Ming's full mental pressure, the crimson hand finally ceased its struggles, though still somewhat reluctantly. It wasn't until Liu Ming picked up a blood-red irregular solid from the shattered remains of the rot beast, known to passers by as the black fang and coiled claw wolf. Once he had the blood-red lump in his arms, the crimson hand finally ceased its struggles, a final tinge of desire and greed lingering, before returning to silence. Liu Ming breathed a sigh of relief. Only then did he realize that his slaying of the rot beast had been witnessed by the crowd around him, who were now discussing it. Who's that brat? He silently and passively killed the rot beast that was handed over to the scholar's castle from the mountainside manor, but he even went so far as to collect the most valuable corrosion pronucleus from its body. What audacity! To Liu Ming's hearing, the cacophony of discussion melted into a rhythmic conversation that reached his ears. So this thing is called a corrosion pronucleus, he thought to himself. I wonder what this has to do with the blood the scalded hand needs. Liu Ming pondered, feeling the pitted, hard object in his arms, a piece of unattractive stone common on the roadside. How do you think the Banshan Manor guards will deal with him? A voice asked with a gloating smile to the onlookers. As soon as he finished speaking, at the command of the leading knight, 3 riders on tall war horses, who had already cleared out the rotten beasts that had escaped the cages, rode towards Liu Ming. Their formidable strength made them unfazed by the few volatile less rotten beasts that had escaped their cages. The crowd still watching, their eyes narrowed, ready for a spectacle. This brat would most likely be severely humiliated by the domineering Banshan Manor guards, especially since the leading knight was the notorious 2nd Squadron captain of the guards, the vicious fox, Steenan. As the 3 riders spurred their horses toward Liu Ming didn't just stand there, but sidled aside. TSK, where's that calm, composed demeanor he had after just killing a rot beast? PSSST, coward. Seeing Liu Ming walk away, seemingly in a cowardly manner, the crowd, assuming there was nothing more to watch, burst into laughter. But Liu Ming's next move silenced the jeers. What's he doing? A man dressed in half-leather armor, stiff crocodile skin trousers, and cowhide combat boots gulped, breaking the silence. His question erupted in an uproar. Liu Ming's sidling wasn't to avoid the approaching riders, but to move toward the remains of another odd beast. From the pile of carcasses, he retrieved another corrosive nucleus and, without a word, slipped it into his jacket pocket. That kid's got some nerve. Jedma, judging by the weapon and power that kid just used, what's your estimate of his strength? A bystander, carrying a dramatic heavy sword as tall as a man and as wide as an adult's waist, and looking incredibly tough, asked his companion. The weapon his companion was questioning was a musket, even thicker than Liu Ming's SOM-K3 jet rifle. According to the theory that the size of a hunter's weapon indicates its strength, this person must be a powerful hunter. The SOM-K3 jet rifle, made by the SOM craftsman, is at the level of a full-fledged hunter, his companion said calmly. Upon hearing Jedma's answer, his companion, carrying the heavy sword, was stunned. Only a full-fledged hunter? From his perspective, the shot that had just been fired at the decaying beast's face would have been difficult for even him to dodge, and he could only take it head on. Choosing to resist would only result in a slightly better outcome than the rotten beast's desperate death. He wouldn't be seriously injured or even killed, but injury was inevitable. And he was a mid-level knight, a well-known mid-level knight throughout the town. Yes. Suppressing his shock, he chose to trust his companion's judgment. This fellow was a mid-level hunter, only slightly inferior in skill to himself, and he believed his vision was impeccable. His combat awareness is comparable to mine, but his skills are only at the level of a regular hunter. Just as Aus's aftershocks were still lingering, Jedma's comment shocked him. Aus took a deep breath and commented, "He truly has extraordinary potential." Their companion, a towering figure swathed in a grey robe, the hilt of a long sword peeking out from beneath, asked, "Captain, Vice Captain, do you want to protect him?" They had rushed back to the town from the restricted area's forward base today to reinforce their hunting team. During several commission missions last quarter, their small team of less than 20 had already lost 3 of their companions. 1 died, and 2 were permanently disabled and unable to fight. Seeing Liu Ming, everyone in the team was moved. A companion with not only potential, but also strength would be a welcome sight for those who made a living in the restricted area, dealing with all sorts of monsters. "Let's wait and see," Osei said, raising his right hand and pressing it, signaling his companions to remain calm. Although their Warframe team was renowned throughout the hunter community of Jerrytown, they still had to be cautious about offending a behemoth like the Half-Mountain Manor, just to recruit a promising newcomer. Although the Half-Mountain Manor was now a hollowed out entity, with its owner and mistress missing, and its heir stripped of power, the entire estate had practically fallen into the hands of a group of powerful transcendents within the manor. None of those with influence in Half-Mountain Manor were easy to deal with. The man before them, known as the Fierce Fox, was one of them. Although his martial prowess was comparable to his own, and there was no other member of his team above the rank of junior knight, the power he embodied filled a sense of dread among the ruthless leader of his hunter team. Hunters, divided into commission hunters, monster hunters, pet hunters, bounty hunters, gourmet hunters, treasure hunters, and relic hunters, constituted the largest group of transcendents in the entire Cloud Top Oasis. However, sheer size didn't guarantee strength. The hunter organization was actually quite fragmented. Aside from the relatively stable membership structure of hunter teams formed by similar hunters to better complete missions, organizations like the Hunter Guild and the Hunter Rating Committee were more like hollow shells, devoid of any cohesive power, solely responsible for issuing missions and providing ratings. True power lay in the hands of various administrative councils and administrators. Even the great hunter Huendi, the president of the Hunter Guild in the crucial town of Jerry, felt intimidated by the might of the entire Half-Mountain Manor, commanded by Great Knight Kuel. This was even more so for a mid-level knight like himself, who had just earned the title of Senior Commission Hunter. A lean camel is bigger than a horse. It was precisely because this camel was nearly lean that he had the courage to not give up on recruiting Liu Ming, but decided to wait and see what happened before taking action. Instead of just standing by and watching the show unfold, he decided to wait and see if Liu Ming could satisfy him enough, so much so that he couldn't let go. Then offending the fox for a newcomer wouldn't be completely unacceptable. Despite his notoriety, the fox was only the captain of the 2nd Squadron of the Half-Mountain Manor Guard. He didn't command much or just some fear. In terms of military strength, only a handful of squadron captains and above in the entire half-mountain manor guard had reached the level of intermediate hunters or intermediate knights. The convoy transporting the rotten beast to the scholar's castle this time included only one intermediate knight, the fox. On his side, there were three. Chapter 216 Steam Chariot, Order of the Rose. Sitting atop a steely silver grey chariot, Liu Ming stared up at the sky in silence. It might be called a chariot, but in terms of size, it was a veritable steel behemoth. The largest mining truck he'd ever seen, the kind used only in mines, might not have been as massive as the steel behemoth he was riding. Through the palm-sized windows of the chariot, enclosed by iron protective fences, he gazed at the scenery rushing by. Liu Ming curled his lips helplessly, unable to help, but imagine this world overlapping with the one he'd left behind. This vehicle, known as a tracked steam train, bore a striking resemblance to a tank. That is, if it was shrunk dozens or even hundreds of times. Its full name is wheeled tracked steam train. It was a unique mode of transport found in this world. Similar in appearance to a tracked tank, it was driven entirely by tracks and axles, powered by steam engines and a power reactor. This massive tracked steam train astonished Liu Ming immensely. The train's body was a silvery grey, somewhat darker, constructed of fine steel. The front of the train reflected a metallic silver sheen, dazzling in the sunlight. The train was roughly 2 or 3 stories tall, with nearly 200 windows along its sides, each typically housing 4 or 5 seats. In other words, this speeding tracked vehicle could accommodate nearly 1,000 passengers at peak capacity. This sheer number was enough to astound him. An 18-carriage regular train could only carry about 2,000 passengers. The train was able to maintain such a large size and capacity because it operated on pre-existing tracks. All safety factors and kinetic energy consumption were under control. A tracked steam train, on the other hand, relied entirely on tracks, axles, an internal power plant, and steam engines to propel such a massive vehicle across the plateau. This was unimaginable in Liu Ming's previous world. The reason for this feat lay in the environment in which the tracked steam train operated. All the tracked steam locomotives in the main cities and major towns of Cloud Top Oasis operate on a plateau. The most striking feature of the St. White Mercer Plateau is its flatness. There are hardly any steep hills or foothills across the entire St. White Mercer Plateau. It's almost entirely flat, without having to climb mountains or traverse hills. Tracked steam locomotives have excellent terrain. Imagine if there were steep slopes everywhere. Such a large and bloated vehicle would struggle to move without the reliance on tracks. However, its massive size also gives it advantages that ordinary vehicles lack. This is especially true in a dangerous environment like this, where all sorts of bizarre, terrifying, and dangerous monsters are lurking everywhere. Along the way, Liu Ming had seen no fewer than 6 waves of attacking monsters sent flying, crushed to pulp beneath the wheels of the iron chariot. 2 hours earlier, as Liu Ming picked up his third corrosive nucleus, 3 sturdy riders approached him. Without a word, the central rider raised his hand and lashed out with his spiked whip. A corpse of a rotten beast was whipped to the point of nearly breaking apart. The 3 men's intentions were self-evident. They were very dissatisfied with their own behavior of collecting the corrosive pronuclei without paying attention to others. However, Liu Ming ignored them, dodged the incoming whip, and once again used his Jufeng sword to pick out the pronuclei from the corpse. Although the Jufeng sword's power had been sealed after arriving in this world, its sharpness remained the same. The tip of the sword, which could cut through iron like mud, instantly pierced through the hard skin of the rotten beast, and the pronuclei were instantly picked up by him. Just as the rider who had just swung the whip was about to speak, Liu Ming actually ran quickly to the last corpse of the rotten beast and got the last pronucleus. This scene, which could almost be considered a provocation, almost made the 3 fierce riders furious. The weapons in their hands, the bloodstains still not dry, were already pointed at him. Very good, young man. Thank you for extracting the pronucleus for us, saving us some trouble. Now, let me dig the pronucleus out of your corpse. The middle rider drew his knight's epee and roared, leading the other 2 riders on their horses to charge Liu Ming. Liu Ming remained expressionless as he watched the 3 men, their strength only at F rank, the equivalent of a semi-knight in this world, Despite his own lack of ability, he could easily defeat them with the weapons in his hands. However, Liu Ming did not intend to fight them to the death. Boom. A jet bullet blasted out, and the leading rider's majestic steed instantly buckled from its gallop. Like his horse, the rider, like a tidal wave, fell to the hard stone pavement. The powerful kinetic energy of the jet bullet had almost completely dented the horse's broad, muscular chest. Liu Ming, after scoring a goal with his shot, dodged the other two riders, not intending to continue the killing spree. He pulled out the token Arends had given him, displaying the side engraved with the designs of Banshan Manor and Rose Mountain. According to Arends, this rose token was the symbol of their family. Any vassal of Banshan Manor, when presented with a rose token, was obliged to at least superficially obey the token's bearer. However, the rose token didn't seem to be working. The fierce riders from Banshan Manor were stunned for only a few seconds after seeing the token before. Commanded by a knight clearly leading the charge, they all descended upon him. Kill this brat. With no other choice, Liu Ming scurried towards the shop, preparing to use the terrain to his advantage to confront these menacing invaders. Just as he was about to break free, a group of elderly men suddenly emerged, shouting and blocking the knight's advance. Say, Sidnan, are you planning on bringing your second guard to attack my men right in front of me? An elderly man, with a beard thicker than his own, shouldering a broadsword even more exaggerated than his own, stepped forward and spoke calmly as he gazed upon the ferocious knight charging at him. Just a few men halted the momentum of the dozens of riders charging like a whirlwind. As expected, a bloodbath was imminent. The moment the two sides collided, the fierce fox Sidnan raised his right hand, spreading his fingers, a signal to halt. After the dozens of riders behind him halted in obedience, he stared at the group in front of him, gnashing his teeth in anger. "Osi, you armored squad, are you trying to stop me?" Of the men before him, 3 possessed auras no less powerful than his own. He knew the significance of mid-level knight to an ordinary knight. This meant that, even if his side outnumbered the enemy by dozens, their chances of victory were extremely slim. The crowd erupted in an uproar at the words of fierce fox Sidnan, captain of the armored squad, Swift Nighthouse, and captain of the 2nd Guard Squadron of the Hillside Manor, fierce fox Sidnan. They were in for a real fight today. You attacked our comrades in public. As captain, am I supposed to flee under the tyranny of your guard? Aus demanded coldly. Your comrades? I know all 18 of you in the armored squad, and this brat doesn't seem to be among them. Sidnan grumbled. He stole the rose token from Miss Arends, the heiress to Hillside Manor. Are you going to protect him and incur the wrath of the entire Hillside Manor? Sidnan's voice grew colder. Sidnan sneered inwardly. How dare this brat flaunt a rose token? Didn't he know that even the owner of a rose token was in danger? He thought a rose token could save his life. Furthermore, that scoundrel Arends had actually handed over the rose token, the symbol of the Meadow family, to an outsider. Kitty, I finally got hold of something. Of course, the prerequisite is to kill the boy in front of you and take away the rose order. Upon hearing this, Alcé's face froze, and his expression gradually became a little ugly. Offending a vicious fox, Sidnan, and angering the entire Banshan Manor are two completely different concepts. Reason told him that retreating at this time was the right decision. But he finally asked, boy, how did you get the rose order? If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 217, Forward-Based Dark Forest. Liu Ming, hiding behind the counter inside the shop's main entrance, aiming his jet gun, didn't respond. Instead, he stuck his head out and slowly shook his head at Aus, who was waiting inside to question him. He indicated that the rose token in his hand wasn't stolen. Seeing Liu Ming shake his head, Aus immediately made a decision. My friend didn't steal it. Sidnan, are you slandering him? Aus's eyes suddenly grew fierce. He lifted his great sword, which must have weighed hundreds of tick, with a single hand, as easily as if it were a piece of straw, the tip pointing directly at Fierce Fox. This was a signal, and the other members of the armored squad drew their weapons and stood ready. Then tell me, how did he get the rose token? It's a token of the Meadow family. Fierce Fox demanded, unyielding. Stealing the rose token was a fabricated accusation, so his question was somewhat uncertain. Seeing that Alcé couldn't answer for a while, Sidenon's accusations followed. Since he belongs to your armor, for Lord Wolfsword's sake, I can leave him alone. He can even take the few pieces of corruption protocol obtained from our corrupted beasts, but he must leave the Rose Order with me. Huh? For Wolfsword's sake? What if Wolfsword's sake isn't? Are you threatening me? The silent Alcé suddenly roared. Hunters are all transcendents, and transcendents have the opportunity to join the town police or garrison. The reason why countless transcendents, after weighing the pros and cons, choose the hunter profession, a high-risk profession that carries a heavy burden, is precisely because of the unique nature of this profession, the freedom and lack of constraints. Being threatened is something that no hunter can accept. Sidenon looked at the 3 mid-level knights standing with swords drawn, and several key members of the armored squad with disdain. Unfazed, he sneered. What? You still want to fight? You think you can rest easy, just because you can handle me with just a few men? Don't blame me for not reminding you, this place is only a dozen minutes away from Banshan Manor, and Knight Grey is in charge there. After all, Rose Mountain was his home turf, his territory. This isn't a forbidden zone with no order or law. This is the Jerry Stronghold, the Archon's jurisdiction, he continued, each word with conviction. Osei fell silent again. Grey, the bitter-faced twin-sword Grey deputy captain of the Banshan Manor security team. One of Banshan Manor's only 3 high-ranking professionals, a high-ranking knight. He understood why the other side was still willing to negotiate with him. It wasn't just because his side had a superior force, but also because of Wolfsword Cuman. Wolfsword Cuman, the controller and guardian of the Dark Forest forward base, a high-ranking knight and a veteran swordsman of exceptional skill, was also his own Warframe team's benefactor. The Warframe team's progress in the restricted area was largely due to Wolfsword's care. Wolfsword Cuman and the bitter-faced twin swords he referred to, Grey, had a deep connection. Both hailed from the wine-splitting sword Jiminjina's main city, and were disciples of the wine-speed sword master, Njexi. Although they shared the same mentor, and were both prominent figures in Jerry, their relationship could be described as a rift between fire and water. If he truly attracted the notorious Grey, his escape today would be a matter of doubt. Furthermore, Sidenon was currently representing the official convoy transporting rod beasts from Half Mountain Manor to Scholar's Castle. He had exaggerated his actions, accusing them of blocking the official transport convoy, a potential conviction under the relevant laws. Such penalties, which were not considered particularly serious, were generally reserved for ordinary people, and were hardly a significant issue for a seasoned hunter like him. The real fear was that, with such a charge, the bitter-faced twin swordsman, Grey, would be perfectly justified in executing them on the spot. As long as it was legally justifiable, even Lord Wolfsword, upon learning the full story, would be unable to openly object. Just as Alcé was unable to advance or retreat, a purple object flew straight out of the shop. Those on the standoff were startled, initially believing it to be Liu Ming's desperate struggle, a desperate move. But as the purple object approached, Sidenon's face was filled with surprise. He reached out, and the intricately patterned rose token appeared in his palm. You can take him away. With the rose token in hand, Sidenon decided not to attack again. The members of the armor squad were more than the few dozen men he had with him could handle. The wisest decision was to withdraw once their objective had been achieved. Come out, let's go. Alcé glanced deeply at Liu Ming, who stood up and walked out of the shop, still on guard. He then glared fiercely at Sidenon and led the way. He remembered this guy using Grey to test him. However, today, on someone else's turf, it wasn't appropriate to confront him head-on. He could only give in for now. Liu Ming followed the Warframe squad out of the encirclement in a daze. As for the consequences of having the Rose Order, given by his employer, errands, taken away, he couldn't intervene at this moment. Ultimately, his strength was insufficient. Before leaving, he suddenly turned back and calmly glanced at Sidenon, who was playing with the Rose Order with a look of joy on his face. Sooner or later, I'll make him return everything he stole, skin and bones. Then, Alcé and the others led him to the steel chariot that rumbled out of the city. Their destination was a forward base in the restricted area, called the Night Forest, a temporary resting place for hunters and adventurers in the restricted area, a beacon of life in the ruthless wilderness forbidden zone. It's a common understanding among all transcendents that without the individual strength of a high-ranking knight or an extremely powerful team, it's impossible to cross the wilderness forbidden zone and reach this place. Only with the help of a steam chariot can anyone traverse the countless dangers of the terrifying death forbidden zone and finally reach this place. It's precisely because of the existence of the forward base that the transcendents active in the wilderness forbidden zone dare to venture deep into the forbidden zone without worry. Because, no matter what monster they encounter, as long as they can escape to the forward base alive, they have at least saved their lives. Woo woo woo. Suddenly, the shrill high-pitched whine of a steam engine whistle echoed from the roof outside the train window. Then, an elegant female voice echoed from within the carriage. We've arrived at Black Forest Station. Hunters and adventurers destined for the Black Forest, please disembark immediately. The chariot will stop at this station in 3 minutes, and then depart again. Looking at Liu Ming, who was still in a daze, Osei laughed and woke him, saying, "Boy, this is a paradise for the brave and a hell for the cowardly. Follow me." With that, he jumped off the carriage first. That's right, jump. Because the group's seats were all on the second floor of this tracked steam train. The tracked steam train had 3 floors, and the door of the second floor was suspended 3 or 4 meters above the ground. Chapter 218, Forest of Wealth, Scarlet Throbbing. The Dark Forest, also known as Forward Base Number 4, is one of the 16 forward bases under the jurisdiction of the Jerry City. Its guardian and commander of the Dark Forest garrison is Wolfsword Cuman. 20 years ago, when the Jerry City Council resolved to establish a forward base within the Dark Forest, it would provide a resting place for hunters and adventurers undertaking adventures and missions. Ever since Forward Base Number 4, also known as the Military Fortress of the Dark Forest, was built, Wolfsword Cuman has been stationed there permanently. The Dark Forest is rife with dangers, home to countless terrifying, dangerous, and bizarre monsters. Besides monsters, mutated by the power of corruption, there are also several large incubation nests of the corrupted race. Logically, this area is considered off limits to humans, uninhabitable. Yet, countless hunters and adventurers continue to venture into the forest, walking the fine line between life and death. The reason for this is ultimately because the Dark Forest holds immense benefits that humanity cannot forsake. Countless rare minerals, precious medicinal herbs, and numerous monster materials of immense value all attracted the extraordinary monster hunters, gourmet hunters, medicinal herb hunters, and commission hunters, all eyeing these treasures, poured into the death forest like a tide. Many were reduced to skeletal remains, eternally interred here, while others amassed fortunes that would last them several lifetimes. The Warframe Squad, on the other hand, was a group of commission hunters, paid to perform tasks. Their tasks included gathering special medicinal herbs, hunting rare monster materials, and exploring for minerals. Precisely because of their numerous and demanding tasks, they were wealthy. This was the message the Warframe Squad's Osei, Jedma, and others had instilled in him along the way. The Night Forest was their final destination, and it was also the dangerous jungle they would soon traverse. The steam locomotive didn't take them to their final destination, the gates of Forward Base Number 4. Instead, it dropped them off at the Night Forest Station, over 10 kilometers away. To reach their final destination, they had to traverse the Night Forest. The terrain of the Night Forest wasn't suitable for tracked steam trains. This was a limitation of tracked steam trains, which were only suitable for flat terrain. Hills, slopes, wetlands, and jungles were impassable. Therefore, the challenge facing the group was navigating this treacherous forest. Along with the 7 members of the Warframe team, another 20 or 30 people disembarked. These were all hunters and adventurers familiar to us, active in the area surrounding the Night Forest. They all accepted Alce's group as their leader, and prepared to enter the Night Forest together. After all, in the wilderness, every transcendental being meant more strength, and when there were no conflicts of interest, most people preferred to travel in company. The station was a desolate, semicircular platform, with a dense forest beyond. The forest was filled with countless towering ancient trees, their dense, lush branches and leaves making entering the forest as dark as entering the night. As dozens of people eagerly awaited the arrival of Swift Knight Alcei, leading the team through the dark forest, he suddenly looked at Liu Ming and said, "Boy, remember, the deadly dangers of this forest often don't come from the outside world, but from one's own negligence and letting down one's guard. This is a forest that can eat people, especially newcomers like you." As a veteran of the dark forest for nearly 6 years, he knew full well that there had never been anyone like Liu Ming there, so he was certain he was a newcomer. Seeing Liu Ming nod, Alcei chuckled and took the lead into the dangerous jungle. The moment they entered the jungle, a blood-red mosquito, half the size of a palm, caught Liu Ming's eye. With a smack, the strangely large blood-red mosquito was slapped to death against a nearby tree trunk. As the blood-red mosquito was slapped into a pool of blood, Liu Ming's right hand trembled uncontrollably towards the blood. It seemed that this mosquito also contained a considerable amount of blood energy. The group's pace didn't slow even for a single mosquito. As they advanced deeper into the dense forest, bizarre occurrences occurred. Suddenly, a roar of pain echoed. "Ah!" The man, paralyzed and slumped to the ground by the poison, swallowed the antidote and quickly stood up. Unlike ordinary people who would take a long time to recover from poisoning, this man, once detoxified, immediately continued walking with the others, as if nothing had happened. These kinds of poisonous plants and animals are common threats in the dark forest. Many are deadly, but easy to deal with preparation. You'll get used to them after spending time here. Jamaid, the deputy captain of the armor squad, suddenly appeared beside Liu Ming and spoke calmly to the still uncomfortable Liu Ming. Roar. He had barely finished speaking when a slender beast with a mouth full of fangs and black and blue spots like moldy food leaped out from behind an ancient tree. Bang. Liu Ming expected Jamaid to fire his gun, but he grabbed the butt of his gun and struck the beast in the face. The beast flew backward like a flying sandbag, spewing blood. Jamaid didn't even glance at the beast, continuing forward. Liu Ming noticed many similarities between the beast and the Black Fang and coiled claw wolf he had previously slain. He approached it to finish it off, and sure enough, he unearthed a corrosive pronucleus from its chest. This low-level corrosive pronucleus, which many transcendents would dismiss, intrigued him. The Crimson Hand's throbbing movement suggested it would be beneficial to its evolution. The Crimson Hand, Liu Ming's most promising ability, had never fully realized its potential. It was even gradually failing to keep up with Liu Ming's battle pace. The primary reason for this was its slow evolution. After awakening its 2 magical traits and abilities, its progress had almost stagnated. Ultimately, finding the pure blood energy necessary to evolve the Crimson Hand was difficult. Chapter 219, The Black Blood Eagle's Final Occupation, Part 1. Rustle. The sound of objects rubbing against branches and leaves echoed through the dense forest. A massive black shadow, as swift as lightning, leaped from a towering ancient tree and charged frantically at Liu Ming and his companions. In a matter of seconds, it was upon them with lightning speed. Boom. As the shadow lunged, Alcei took a step forward and unleashed a single effortless punch, sending the attacking figure flying backwards even faster than it had come, crashing into the towering tree from which it had leaped. Rumble. The ancient tree snapped, its trunk cleaving under the immense force of the impact, its crown tilting as it crashed to the ground, sending a plume of dust soaring into the air. A swordsman, cloaked in a black cloak, swiftly plunged into the dust. With 2 swipes, he sliced the shadow's body open and extracted a corrosive nucleus the size of a pebble. The pronucleus of a low-level corruption beast, the jungle ape. He wiped the bloody pronucleus clean and put it in his backpack. In a cheerful mood, he laughed and teased Liu Ming. "Mute, I can't give you this. Corruption pronuclei above adult size are very valuable." The mute, of course, was Liu Ming. Because he remained silent throughout the journey, only nodding or shaking his head, the Warframe team and his companions called him Mute. As for the black-cloaked swordsman, he was the Warframe team's last intermediate level transcendent, a mid-level knight proficient in swordsmanship, the swift shadow swordsman Hogmids. Upon hearing this, Liu Ming shrugged, indicating a lack of concern. Along the way, he had collected at least 40 corrosive pronuclei. Although they were all low grade, worthless items that no one cared about, he was already satisfied. He tactfully left the high level Pranakli alone, lest he offend them. By then, he understood the reason these people had helped him out. They actually wanted to recruit him into the War Armor Squad, a commissioned hunting team. They proactively expressed their willingness to recruit Liu Ming, and this dispelled Liu Ming's confusion and resentment. Furthermore, it became imperative for him to maintain a close comradeship with them. This was especially true given that the individuals who had come to his rescue were each significantly more powerful than him. From their initial entry into the jungle to their deeper depths, the group encountered few serious dangers, save for a venomous spider bite that caught them off guard. Even those that did occur were quickly suppressed by the powerful force of the group, led by 3 mid-level transcendents, before any disturbance could arise. Based on his observations along the way, Liu Ming concluded that these so-called mid-level knights and mid-level hunters were at least comparable in power and combat power to first-tier S-class professionals. At this stage, the most terrifying monsters on Earth were probably at this level. Furthermore, according to his assessment, even mid-level transcendents have varying levels of strength. I'll say, the strongest of the group had demonstrated such prowess in such a short period that his personal strength was likely approaching SS level or even SSS level. This beast was definitely capable of crushing Liu Ming to death with his bare hands, leaving him powerless without even the slightest resistance. After realizing the disparity in reality and reaching this conclusion, Liu Ming smiled dryly and helplessly. Previously, when he faced the leader of the caravan that had taken the Rose Order, he had also been a mid-level knight, and he had previously planned to rely on terrain and weapons to resist. If it weren't for Rousey's group, even if he had released his power seal, he would have been suppressed in an instant. His life would have been in jeopardy. This feeling of helplessness, of having his life in the hands of others, filled Liu Ming with frustration. Fortunately, for the time being, the Warframe team showed no ill will towards him, meaning he was safe for the time being. At this point, the group reached a relatively open area, bathed in sunlight, and saw a large, shimmering lake. This was Yellen Lake. According to Rousey, reaching Yellen Lake meant they were almost 2/3 of the way through the dense forest. The entire night forest was shrouded in a gloomy dark atmosphere. Barely a ray of sunlight could be seen in the dense forest, its beams of light and energy obscured by the towering canopies, absorbed by the leaves. In this chronically sunless environment, apart from the tall trees that could compete for sunlight, the only plants that managed to thrive were shade-loving plants. This sudden clearing, devoid of dense trees, gave Liu Ming a sense of impending danger. Don't be surprised. This is the habitat of some dangerous flying monsters. They need to rehydrate in the night forest lake, and so they forcibly destroyed the surrounding forests, Hogmitz explained. He had a good sense of his new companion, despite his mute nature. Liu Ming frowned at this. This meant this was a dangerous area. Sure enough, his premonition was correct. Seeing Liu Ming frown, Hogmitz added, originally, we were planning to take a detour to reach the forward base from outside the night forest. It wasn't until someone discovered that flying monsters typically flock to Yellen Lake to drink in the evening. Now, in the morning, it's safer, so we abandoned the detour and chose this shorter route. Yellen Lake, with its narrowest point only tens or even hundreds of meters wide, blocked everyone's path, forcing them to wade across. With the exception of the newcomer, Liu Ming, who remained stunned, everyone skillfully retrieved tools from their backpacks. It was a specially made iron cable, as thick as a cable. The first few to unleash it were already wielding it with vigorous force, flinging it across the water in a flash. Each end of the cable had sharp anchors, like anchors. They fastened the anchors to rocks or trees, then tied their ends to fixed objects on the other side. Crossing Yellen Lake with a cable is the most common way to cross the lake. Wading, on the other hand, is simply a dangerous undertaking. Night forest lake teems with ferocious aquatic monsters, eager to feast on human flesh. Falling into the water is practically certain death. Everyone strives to throw the iron chain as high as possible, ideally draping it over to sparsely growing trees on either bank. Throwing the heavy chain across the river is a piece of cake for everyone. Just as the first 4 people successfully cross, something unexpected happens. Whoosh, 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 or threat, long unseen, suddenly appears. A massive shadow descends from the sky, obscuring the sun. As it draws closer, everyone can see it, a dark crimson, its iron feathers clinging to its body like impervious scales, gleaming in the sunlight. With a single swoop, the crimson monster pounces upon the few who have just crossed the shore, before they even reach the surface. It then flapped its massive wings, spun around, and swung its claws, sharp as iron hooks. Before a hunter could even scream, he was ripped open, and laid dead on the spot. The other 3 transcendents were terrified, and fled into the dense forest. Their choice was a good one. A flying monster like this would have difficulty pursuing them in the dense forest. However, their actions left the people on the other side with a grim look. The people who crossed the river fled without resistance, while a terrifying monster waited in wait. This meant that crossing the river would be difficult for them. The monster seemed in no hurry to kill the others. Instead, it stayed where it was, using its curved, hook-like beak to peck at the colorful intestines and entrails within the unfortunate man's ripped chest and abdomen. It was a massive bird, a ferocious and terrifying flying monster as massive as a fighter jet. Black Blood Eagle. Hogmitz, who had just stood beside Liu Ming, said coldly. Compared to the others, who were all gloomy and dejected, the members of the Warframe squad were visibly excited. All the spoils along the way had most likely fallen into the Warframe squad's lap. This was the unspoken rule of the hunter community. These individuals were essentially hoping to hitch a ride on the Warframe squad's advance base, so naturally, the spoils had little to do with them. And this time, encountering a ferocious and brutal corrupted beast like the Black Blood Eagle, if they lost, they were all doomed, while if they won, they wouldn't get any of the benefits. Naturally, everyone except the Warframe squad was filled with sorrow. Osoi gave a direct order. Hogmitz, cross the river with me. Gemmed, prepare the cloud-piercing rounds. As soon as this thing takes off, attack. With that, he plunged into the lake. Like a human cannonball, Osoi took off from the shore, landing in the center of the lake less than 40 meters from the other side. Then, he swung the iron chain in his hand. It shot out like a bolt of lightning. The anchor of the iron chain stabbed directly into a rock on the opposite bank. Then, with a fierce tug on the chain with his right hand, he soared to the other side like a flying man, landing on his feet. The powerful impact blasted a large crater in the soft mud on the shore. Little chicken, do you like human flesh? After landing, Osoi looked at the giant bird in front of him with a cold and provocative look. Hogmitz then followed suit, instantly gliding across the lake to the other side. They stood shoulder to shoulder with Captain Osoi to confront the Black Blood Eagle. The Black Blood Eagle was one of the most formidable species of medium-sized rot beasts. No matter how confident he was in his captain's combat prowess, he dared not let Osoi face such a terrifying creature alone. Meanwhile, Gemmed, standing in front of Liu Ming, had already loaded his guns with special ammunition and trained his missiles on the Blood Eagle. Chapter 220, The Black Blood Eagle's Final Occupation, Part 2. The lake shimmered, and the gentle breeze blowing along the wide banks occasionally blew blades of grass from the lakeside into the center. Meanwhile, no one on the shores of Yellen Lake was in the mood to admire the truly beautiful surroundings. A bloody battle was brewing. The Black Blood Eagle, its beak like a hook, was still pecking at the corpse of the deceased hunter. As it did so, its blood-red eyes flicked towards the provocative human. Else. The standoff lasted less than 10 seconds before Oust launched the first attack. Wielding a mighty sword as tall as a man, he charged at the Black Blood Eagle with the speed of a bull. Just as the sword was about to strike the eagle, the Black Blood Eagle flapped its wings, sweeping up a cloud of grass and taking flight. Oust's powerful attack missed, crashing heavily into a massive rock half a man tall on the shore. Boom. The massive rock instantly crumbled to dust. Just as the Black Blood Eagle dodged the attack, before it could even congratulate itself, Hogmitz leaped up like a flash of lightning, his blade pointed directly at the eagle's right wing. The tip of Hogmitz's long sword gleamed with a deep white brilliance, seemingly capable of piercing anything solid, even the Black Blood Eagle's armor-like scales. No one doubted that a successful strike would severely impair the eagle's flight and severely damage its wings. Even a broken wing and a fall were possible. In the critical moment of being stabbed by Yi Jian, the Black Blood Eagle frantically flapped its wings again. Whoosh! A hurricane-like tornado swept over. The strong winds deflected Hogmitz's sword from its original target. Furthermore, the eagle's body shifted sideways in the wind, and ultimately, the tip of his sword only grazed the wing bone. This injury, for the black blood eagle's immense wingspan, spanning 20 to 30 meters, would be considered a minor injury, or even a minor one. But this injury successfully enraged the ferocious bird. The blood eagle's retaliatory attacks followed one after another, relentlessly striking. Hogmitz, mid-air, instantly endured no fewer than 10 of the blood eagle's swift, sweeping blows. By the time he finally landed on his feet, his clothing, especially his wide black cloak, was tattered by the blood eagle's sharp claws. Beneath the tattered garments lay a gleaming silvery inner armor. This was a half-body armor forged from fine steel, reinforced with special secret patterns by scholars. Even the blood eagle's attacks only sustained a few shallow scratches, demonstrating its defensive strength and durability. Had it not been for this inner armor, Hogmitz's flesh would have been ripped to shreds by the blood eagle's iron claws. As Hogmitz successfully landed, the blood eagle swooped down once more with a frenzy of attacks. Having barely landed, and barely regained his footing, Hogmitz was now powerless to defend himself, except by holding his sword across his chest. Osui was dozens of meters away, temporarily out of reach. Boom. The familiar thunderous sound of gunfire echoed. Standing before Liu Ming, Jimade held the beast in his hand, a wisp of white smoke billowing from the muzzle. Gigi the black blood eagle let out a shrill cry, like a night owl. Its right wing, slightly injured by Hogmitz's sword tip, was instantly ripped open by the roar, leaving a bloody hole over a meter long. The black blood eagle's flight seemed precarious. Even a 1 meter wide wound wouldn't have been fatal for a wing spanning 7 or 8 meters. However, the powerful kinetic energy of the special bullet, combined with the flaming fragments that exploded upon impact, dealt a devastating blow to the ferocious bird. Just as the black blood eagle, staggering from the wound, had regained its stable flight and was about to flap its wings for take off, Osui roared and charged. Die. Bang. The black blood eagle had already soared over 10 meters high. Alcei, carrying a massive sword as massive as a door panel, leaped into the air and struck the eagle's intact left wing. Crack. The wing was instantly broken. The black blood eagle flapped its wings in panic, but continued to fall involuntarily. Amidst the air, Alcei smiled with satisfaction. His vast hunting experience suggested that this creature, with its wings severely damaged, was doomed. With no recourse in mid-air, he dropped rapidly, his greatsword pointed downward, landing firmly on his feet. On the ground, he waited, contentedly, for the predator, now so easily captured, to fall. Whoosh, whoosh. As Alcei touched down, the black blood eagle, like a last-ditch effort, twisted its body and flapped its wings frantically. The air currents surrounding the eagle surged towards it, enveloping it in a sudden, mysterious rise. Boom. Seeing the duck about to flee, Jemad fired a second shot. Whoosh. The black blood eagle, already a sitting duck in the air, unexpectedly dodged the bullet at an odd angle, lifted and engulfed by the current. Bang. Another shot. Whoosh. Another dodge. Amidst the helpless expressions of the crowd, the blood eagle soared further and further away. It seems that the success of that last shot was due to surprise. The black blood eagle is certainly not easy to kill. Jemad, don't blame yourself. Osui leaped overboard, patted his deputy's shoulder, and said to Jemad, who looked a little ashamed for not having saved the blood eagle. The black blood eagle had already soared to a height of over 300 meters above the lake. While this world's long-range weapons are immensely powerful, their range is pitifully short. A few hundred meters above sea level, it was beyond the effective range of Jemad's Python hunting X-type cannon. At such a distance, a hit was essentially a matter of luck. Bang, bang, bang. Just as everyone in the armored squad had given up, 3 powerful gunshots rang out in quick succession. The sudden gunfire captured everyone's attention. It was Mute, the new member who had just joined the squad. With the unwavering courage of a newborn calf, he raised his jet rifle and fired 3 shots in the direction of the black blood eagle's flight. Haha, Mute, why are you wasting your jet rounds? You're expecting to hit the black blood eagle, renowned for its speed, from such a distance? The other team members scoffed at Liu Ming. That's right, Mute. Don't you see our deputy captain has lowered his gun? And you're still. Another team member continued, but before he could finish, his words abruptly stopped. The massive black shadow, which had been gradually disappearing, began to grow larger again. Damn it. Mute actually hit the black blood eagle, a team member exclaimed. Everyone rushed towards the black blood eagle's falling direction. Bang, 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 bang. As they rushed towards the blood eagle, Liu Ming, fearing the monster wasn't dead yet, fired a few more times. The black blood eagle is a top tier species of mid-level rot beasts. The total value of its body materials and pre-nuclei is between 8 and 9,000 Azure coins. According to the distribution ratio, Hogmitz and I, who engage the blood eagle head on, will share 30%. Gemmed, who scored with a single shot, will receive 20%, and the rest of us, who didn't participate in the battle, will receive 20%. And the final 30% goes to our newcomer in the armored squad, the miracle boy who performed a miracle and shot down the blood eagle Mute. After completing the autopsy of the blood eagle and collecting all the valuable primary body materials, Captain Osei began dividing the spoils. Everyone was surprised and nodded in agreement that Mute, the newcomer, would receive 30%. While this distribution was somewhat preferential to Mute, it was his single shot that had brought down the escaping blood eagle. Otherwise, no one would have gotten even a sip of soup. Therefore, no one objected to this distribution plan. Since no one objects, we'll distribute it according to this ratio. There's quite a lot of materials, so for now, everyone will keep them together. We'll sell them at the forward base and distribute them according to the currency. With that, Osei prepared to lead his men on their way. What he didn't notice was that Liu Ming was staring longingly at his backpack. Or rather, at the blood eagle heart within his bulging backpack, the size of 2 or 3 heads. Also known as the blood eagle pronucleus. Chapter 221, Breaking Free, Unleashing the Red. The moment Osei used the sharp blade at his waist to slice open the black blood eagle's heart and extract it, Liu Ming's right arm, like a heart beating rapidly within its flesh, felt restless. The bright red heart seemed to hold an endless allure for him, causing the crimson hand to become restless and frantically attack the sealed power, attempting to break the barrier and devour the heart. Captain, this blood eagle pronucleus must be worth a fortune. A bald man chuckled at Osei. His name was Runt, a knight in the Warframe squad, skilled in shield defense and battlefield first aid, even serving as a temporary healer in the absence of a medic. Runt, you're right. Even if this pronucleus is processed in the Dark Forest, rather than auctioned off in Jerrytown, it's worth at least 7,000 Azure coins, another Warframe squad hunter remarked with equal delight. This trip not only secured a promising new member, but also yielded a significant reward, leaving everyone in high spirits. However, Osei ignored them, instead staring at the new member with a hint of surprise. Liu Ming's right arm, covered in bizarre blood red patterns, was dancing wildly and uncontrollably. It was like the brief moment of loss of control when the Scholar Hand's magical abilities and properties were first constructed. After the battle with the black blood eagle, Liu Ming had silently walked at the back of the group. As a result, few besides Osei had noticed his abnormality. Mute, what's wrong with you? Osei turned and approached, asking with concern. At that moment, Liu Ming was unable to answer. The throbbing veins in his neck and head, and the look of intense pain on his face, all indicated that he was in a precarious situation. Ripping. As the Scholar Hand struggled frantically, Liu Ming's fingertips shifted in length like cat claws, a strange sight. The clothing on his right arm was completely ripped apart by the energies of the crimson fingertips, leaving the blood-stained arm exposed to the air. The bloody arm twisted erratically like a boneless blood snake, and the lines on it deepened in color, gradually changing from blood red to a dark red. Hiss, what is this? This strange arm clearly startled those who noticed Liu Ming's abnormality. Hogmitz was also shocked and asked, Captain, is this bloodline power? As a mid-level transcendent, Hogmitz naturally knew more about transcendental powers than ordinary transcendents. Knights, hunters, and scholars were the mainstays of this world's transcendental power. Knights, with their immense transcendental strength, agility, and physique, all endowed them with extremely formidable combat capabilities. Beyond physical prowess, transcendents could also harness the ubiquitous ki of this world to fight. Just like the vortex of air created by Osei's sword swing just now, it was a manifestation of his control over ki. Beyond their transcendental bodies and ki, a knight's strength also stemmed from the power hidden deep within their bloodlines. Scholars have dubbed this power bloodline power, but even as a mid-level knight, he hadn't awakened this power. Aside from extremely rare bloodline prodigies, the minimum threshold for awakening bloodline powers was a high-level transcendent. And now, with the suspected awakening of bloodline power right before their eyes, Hogmitz and Osui were in for a shock. "I'm afraid it's true," Osui replied uncertainly. "What a find." Jem adjusted his lips, sighing. In the entire Night Forest forward base, only one person was known to have awakened bloodline power. A high-ranking knight who had awakened the bloodline of the Winterfrost giant wolf, the highest guardian of the Night Forest. He was also the benefactor and direct superior of the entire Warframe squad. Wolf Sword Cumin. The thought of this filled the Warframe squad and the entire team with excitement. Witnessing the birth of a bloodline master was a cause for joy for all, simply because bloodline masters were so rare. Osui shook his head helplessly and warned, "Don't celebrate too soon. You and I both know the risks of bloodline awakening. But this bloodline is a bit strange. I've never heard of such a bloodline before," Hogmitz said, somewhat surprised. Indeed, that waving blood red arm was vastly different from the bloodline power commonly understood in this world. Scholars categorize bloodline power into three categories: conventional, natural, and mystical. Claws, metal control, steel bodies, and rock skin all fall under conventional bloodline power. Natural bloodline powers like ice, thunder, fire, and lightning, as well as darkness, light, storms, and rock, are all common. Mystical is a general term for extremely rare and bizarre bloodline powers. Could this be a mystical bloodline power? The description of bloodline power was a semi-secret secret among these transcendents, so everyone had some understanding of it, and was secretly trying to determine its type. As the scholar hand's movements intensified, its crimson fingertips grew sharper, instantly slicing even the occasional falling branches and leaves into shreds. Osui, judging by the numerous characteristics, was certain this was a bloodline awakening. He believed no hunter team would refuse to accept a bloodline holder. To ensure Liu Ming's successful awakening, he immediately ordered, "Everyone, stand guard. Wait until the mute completes his bloodline evolution, before we set out again." Under normal circumstances, even if the members of the armored team would agree to this decision, the accompanying personnel would object. After all, remaining in one place, waiting for someone in the perilous night forest, took immense courage. But now, everyone dispersed and stood guard in unison. The birth of a bloodline holder made them capable of taking such risks. Suddenly, an inhuman roar echoed from the silent forest. Liu Ming's expression deepened into a grimace of agony. The bruised veins and contorted face gave him a hideous look, and the scalded hand's struggle sent his body flailing uncontrollably. To anyone with a discerning eye, this didn't look like a sign of a successful awakening. "Oh no, Captain, I heard that bloodline evolution requires the assistance of substances containing high purity energy," Jimaid said anxiously, as if he had thought of something. "High energy substances?" Osui muttered. "Where could one find high energy substances in this desolate wilderness?" "Oh, right, the blood eagle pronucleus." The heart of the black blood eagle was the pronucleus of this special kind of decayed beast. Now, this heart was the only high energy substance in everyone's possession. Hogmitz watched the captain take out the black blood eagle heart and prepare to hand it to the mute. He asked anxiously, "Captain, the pronucleus is an unpurified high energy substance. Will there be any problems if the mute absorbs it directly?" Osui watched Liu Ming's face grow increasingly ferocious, turning blood red with congestion. He gritted his teeth and tossed the massive heart from his backpack toward Liu Ming. "We'll have to try and see if he's lucky." The moment the blood eagle heart was thrown in front of Liu Ming, his still twitching right hand stopped. 5 fingers, sharp as knives, plunged straight into the blood eagle's heart. With a swoosh, the massive heart was pierced by their tips. Gudang, gudang. Liu Ming's roars suddenly died away, and the eerie sound of swallowing liquid echoed through the silent forest. The source of that sound was Liu Ming, surrounded by the crowd, or rather, his right arm. As Liu Ming continued to absorb the blood energy from the blood eagle pronucleus, his eyes, which had been dyed blood red, gradually regained clarity. He breathed a sigh of relief upon regaining consciousness. I didn't expect the Scholar Hand to be so demonic. It's completely out of my control. Luckily, fortunately, Alcei and the others noticed something was wrong and gave me the Blood Eagle Pronucleus to absorb in time. Otherwise, I would have been doomed. Liu Ming felt a sense of dread. The dangerous scenes just now lingered in his mind. The appearance of the Blood Eagle Pronucleus completely aroused the Scholar Hand's already restless appetite for blood energy. However, Liu Ming wasn't foolish enough to attempt to steal the Blood Eagle nucleus from Mouse and the others. Having just joined the Warframe team and still struggling to gain a firm footing, he couldn't rush into such a matter. He could only forcibly suppress the Scholar Hand's consuming desire. Under Liu Ming's suppression, the Scholar Hand frantically attacked the barrier. This frenzied attack also unleashed its power, as the transcendental power, not belonging to this world, continued to leak. The rules of this world began to descend. It was a consciousness, as cold and unclear as a god, but the pressure was so strong that even his thoughts froze. Without his control, the Scholar Hand's frantic attack on the barrier became even more frantic. His veins throbbing just now were the result of the oppression of the rules. Fortunately, a silver lining in misfortune, the Blood Eagle nucleus saved his life. As it absorbed the pure blood energy within the nucleus, the Scholar Hand fell silent again. The power leaking from the Scholar Hand, as it integrated with the blood energy, began to assimilate into the rules of this world. Eventually, as the leaked power decreased, and the assimilated rules increased, the consciousness of the world's rules quietly faded. This was also because Liu Ming was too weak. The power leaked by the Scholar Hand had little impact on the world's rules. If he had leaked much more power, the rules would have wiped it out in an instant. The thought of that scene filled Liu Ming with a shudder. Damn it. What the hell is the Scholar Hand? Liu Ming, having narrowly escaped death, was furious. He had always used the Scholar Hand as a power and a means. But when this power and means began to not obey its master's will 100% and even nearly killed him, it became a potentially formidable threat and scourge. If the Scholar Hand is truly uncontrollable, I'd rather give it up, Liu Ming said bitterly, but then he thought again, smiled bitterly, and shook his head. Even if he wanted to give it up, it would probably be difficult to do so. If things went as expected, the Scholar Hand's underlying structural matrix, those blood-red starlights, had become one with his soul. Chapter 222 Scholar Evolution, Demonic Servant. The Scholar Hand continued to absorb the surging blood energy from the Blood Eagle's heart. The blood energy provided by this black Blood Eagle's heart was far greater than the blood energy it had previously absorbed from the marrow of the purple corpse demon. Not only was the quality vastly different, but the quantity was over 10 times greater. The people guarding Liu Ming had already fought off 2 or 3 waves of monster attacks, yet Liu Ming continued to absorb the blood energy. The massive heart had shrunk by 2/3. The missing portion had been completely absorbed by Liu Ming. His right hand grew increasingly blood red. As the blood energy continued to flow in, the magic matrix within Liu Ming's mind, now fused with his soul, glowed with a bloody light. Behind the immense Scholar Arm's root-like veins, 2 previously dim blood-red stars now shone with a radiant light. It was as if blood-red stars were about to emerge from the dead silence. As time passed, and as the last trace of blood energy flowed into Liu Ming's body, he opened his closed eyes. A flash of blood-red glint flashed in his eyes. Success. Reawakening. Liu Ming bowed slightly to Aus in gratitude. If it weren't for the Blood Eagle Pronucleus, he wouldn't have been able to ignite the 2 magic stars and awaken 2 powerful new magical abilities. He would most likely have perished instantly, annihilated by the laws of the world. Therefore, he harbored a deep sense of gratitude towards the War Armor Squad. Aus waved his hand, saying, "Haha, you're a member of our War Armor Squad. No need to thank me, Mute. We are proud of your awakening bloodline power. Come, let's see what bloodline power you've awakened. You spent an entire Blood Eagle heart, so it must be worth it." Lund, who had just marveled at the rich harvest, said with a wry smile. Liu Ming smiled faintly and waved his hand. A streak of blood from his right hand splashed onto the corpse of a rot beast nearby, which had just been slain by the group in the attack. The rot beast resembled a giant ape. Among the newly attacked rot beasts, it was one of the more powerful. Blood swirled around the beast's corpse, becoming increasingly viscous, almost solid, rather than illusory. The beast's several meter long body was gradually completely enveloped by the blood. As the blood swirled, a dark red figure gradually emerged from the crimson waves, where the corpse had been. It was a blood-colored creature, about the size of an ape. Its body was completely naked, but upon closer inspection, one could see its smooth body was covered in a layer of blood-colored scales. However, the scales were so densely packed that at first glance, they looked like a seamless, integrated suit of armor. The blood-colored creature's hands were a pair of sharp claws, and its tail, also covered in blood-colored scales, was tipped with a sharp spike. Its vast mouth was densely packed with fangs and sharp teeth, giving it a ferocious appearance. When the ferocious creature, more than half a man's height, opened its eyes and saw Liu Ming, its ferocious aura subsided. Amidst the stunned expressions of the crowd, the creature crouched at Liu Ming's feet like a well-behaved pet, whimpering and meowing. Magic summoning, the group exclaimed, stunned by the monster's actions, as they watched it emerge from the corpse. Magic summoning is the general term used by scholars in this world to describe this type of summoning ability. Hogmitz licked his thick lips and said with a hint of joy, "I didn't expect you, the mute, to have awakened the magic summoning ability. Let me see the strength of your magic summoning servant." Magic summoning servant? Liu Ming was puzzled by the crowd's surprise. Magic summoning might be a term used by humans in this world, but in his memory, it was one of the many magical abilities of the Scholard Hand, the summoning of blood beasts. This blood-colored creature was the first blood beast he had summoned. As for its strength, Liu Ming had a vague feeling it would give him quite a surprise. "Go." Liu Ming pointed at the eager Hogmitz and commanded the blood beast. Wow. The blood beast was powerful and robust, its muscular legs slightly bent. With a gust of wind, it lunged at Hogmitz. Bang! The two collided. The blood beast's sharp claws clashed with Hogmitz's gauntleted fists. The blood beast was instantly sent flying, but the powerful impact caused Hogmitz's body to recoil slightly, though his feet didn't budge at all. "This little thing has incredible strength," Hogmitz exclaimed in amazement. Liu Ming's eyes lit up at the sight. After all, as a mid-level knight, Hogmitz's physical prowess, while perhaps not quite as good as Osei's, was no less than that of a first-tier S-rank melee professional. Even though he hadn't exerted his full strength just now, the blood beast had managed to break his defenses. This showed that the blood beast's power was on par with his own. C-rank. At least C-rank power. Liu Ming's heart was in turmoil. It wasn't because of the blood beast's strength, but rather, according to the magic book containing the Scholard Hand, he could summon and fully control at least 20 to 30 more of them. What did that mean? Were there currently 30 C-rank professionals in the entirety of Wuling City? It was highly unlikely. If he could summon so many blood beasts and bring them back, combined with his 3 dragon pets, he could single-handedly overwhelm the entire city. After calming himself down and feeling relatively calm, Liu Ming immediately recalled the blood beasts. He had just agreed to fight Hogmitz because he wanted to test the blood beast's strength. Once his goal was achieved, he would naturally stop. Osei smiled with satisfaction and commented, "Very good, young man. Your summoned servant has already reached the physical fitness of a full knight. And judging by its ferocious appearance and demeanor, its combat effectiveness is definitely not much better." However, the entire armored team, excluding Liu Ming, had only the strength of a beginner transcendent. The strength of a full knight was nothing. But don't forget, this is a summoned slave, one that's fearless of death. They can be used to scout for danger and mitigate losses for the team. Moreover, even if a summoned slave dies, it can be summoned endlessly. For a team, this is practically a boon. After all, everyone previously relied on hunter-raised pets to detect danger. Pets take a long time to train, and if you lose one, it takes quite a while to replace it. Now that the mute has successfully awakened, we should set off. Osei began. Liu Ming gestured for everyone to wait. He waved his hand again, and a beam of blood shot towards the corpse of another, more powerful rotten beast. As the blood shimmered, a blood wolf, over half a man's height, and over 3 meters long, with a mouth full of fangs and a tail as thick as an iron mace, leaped out from the bloody light. The aura of this blood beast was noticeably more powerful than that of the ape-like creature just now. Amidst the stunned expressions of the crowd, Liu Ming commanded his blood beast to the front. clearing the way. After a long moment, Hogmitz was the first to break the deathly silence, saying, "That dumb kid is truly a pervert. Throughout Jerry City and its subordinate forward bases, I've never heard of anyone who, upon their first magical awakening, could directly control more than one slave." Chapter 223 Bloody Extraction, Night Crown Ancient Ruins. Snap. Rustle. Deep in the jungle, the sounds of dead branches breaking and low brush scraping against each other echoed continuously. A group of exceptionally sturdy humans advanced rapidly through the dense forest. Most wore tight-fitting hunter suits, cloaks, or undershirts, light armor, and weapons, maintaining a constant state of combat readiness. Only one man's attire stood out. His fiery red cape, like a blazing flame, and silver boots with tiny wings stood out from the others. He scurried forward, 4 ferocious blood-red creatures appearing and disappearing, circling, and guarding him. Fourth summoned servant. Hogmitz uttered weakly. This was the 4th servant the mute had summoned. He was just an ordinary, official transcendent, right? What a perverted talent. Liu Ming smiled as he watched Hogmitz mutter weakly. On the surface, with the addition of the blood beasts, the group's progress was smooth sailing. Liu Ming now had 2 more of his fearless blood beast servants. One was a giant blood-red wild boar, over a man's height, and covered in spikes. Another was a monstrous blood-red python, over 20 meters long, with a triangular snake head and a strange fleshy crest, the thickness of an adult's waist. These 4 blood beasts scouted for danger, making the group's progress much smoother. More Ot beast nuclei also found their way into Liu Ming's pockets. Of course, these 4 blood beasts were only visible secretly. Liu Ming's blood beasts had swelled to nearly 10. If he hadn't feared his group would mistake him for a monster, if they learned the truth, he wouldn't have secretly summoned the blood beasts. As Liu Ming advanced, he toyed with a blood-red crystal. It was a beautiful, almost enchanting red, like the most magnificent ruby, but its red was even deeper than a true ruby, more like bloodstone. Blood energy essence. All of this stemmed from Liu Ming's awakened magical ability, advanced blood essence extraction. This solid, resembling the purest bloodstone, was the fruit of his efforts. In his backpack, he still held more than 10 pieces, no less than the one in his hand. The raw material for extracting the blood essence was the corpses of the rot beasts that had been sent to die. Of course, he performed this extraction in secret, fearing it would scare the group. Summoning blood beasts could be considered a magical summoning of servants, but extracting flesh from the corpses and condensing it into blood essence, the shrunken and disgusting appearance of the corpses after the blood essence was extracted, was difficult to explain. He also discovered that monster corpses that had been extracted for blood essence were virtually incapable of summoning blood beasts. This was because the blood energy within them had been nearly depleted. After collecting the piece of blood essence, he looked up at the sky, only to realize it was obscured by the branches and leaves of the treetops. Even though he couldn't see the sky, Liu Ming could vaguely tell it was getting late. They had been traveling through the dark forest for several hours. Suddenly, someone in the group shouted, "We're there. We're just ahead." By then, they had gradually left the dark, gloomy forest. Looking up, they could see a haze rising in the sky, dimly lit by the setting sun. In the distance, a deep black fortress appeared within the mist, just beyond their sight. "Look, that black fortress. It's the Night Forest forward base, the Night Fortress." Alcé introduced it to the curious Liu Ming. "Guys, let's hurry up. Let's go." The crowd roared. Entering, Liu Ming discovered it was a massive military fortress. It was circular, constructed entirely of an unknown, cold rock. In front of the fortress, a deep serene trench encircled the walls, within which faint pale bones could be seen. The path to the fortress was a massive suspension bridge spanning the trench, over 10 meters long. A soldier on duty in a watchtower on the city wall spotted the group approaching from afar. He quickly notified the officer on duty, who in turn ordered several soldiers to open the gate. 4 sturdy warriors, receiving the order, approached the capstan. The capstan began to turn, and 4 chains, each as thick as an adult's thigh, extended from the wall, lowering the ironclad wooden drawbridge that served as the city gate. With a clang, the drawbridge landed, and the group hurriedly stepped onto it. Else, if you come back later, you won't be allowed to enter the city. The officer, waiting at the gate with several of his men, said with a somewhat annoyed look. Ouse clapped the officer's shoulder and laughed. Ha ha ha, Ross, my old friend, are you going to let me spend the night outside the city with the rot beasts? The officer remained irritated. HMPH. You know the rules. The gates can't be opened after dusk. And it's less than a quarter of an hour until dusk. Haha, everyone, ignore him. He's just a bad temper. Ouse shrugged. He knew the rules of the forward base. After the last rays of sunset before nightfall, the drawbridge couldn't be lowered or the city gates opened. This was because the forward base was located in the night forest, and the forest's most ferocious monsters were active at night. Opening the city gates was too risky. If anyone wanted to enter the city after dusk, they had to use the ladder. Wait, who's this guy? He's a stranger, the officer suddenly said, stopping everyone. Ross, have you lost your mind guarding the gate? This is a new member of our armored squad. Osei exclaimed angrily. HMPH. New member? Follow the rules. Come with me to register. Every new member entering the forward base had to complete registration. That was the rule. Osei said helplessly. Hogmitz, accompany the mutant him to register. We'll wait for you inside. Registration took place in an officer's guardhouse on the city wall. The wall, nearly 20 meters high, was the tallest structure in the entire night fortress. Gazing out from the wall, Liu Ming's pupils suddenly dilated, a look of uncontrollable shock crossing his face. What was that? Ha ha ha, dumb, shocking, right? Hogmitz laughed at Liu Ming's expression. Those are the remains of the ancient Night Crown ruins. Everyone who sees them for the first time will have the same expression as you. Ruins? Liu Ming saw a vast complex of buildings, or rather, abandoned buildings. If it were just an ordinary ruined building, Liu Ming wouldn't be frightened. But seeing these buildings suspended in midair was enough to make anyone shudder. Floating city? Liu Ming muttered silently. Shocked, he nearly lost his voice. These are the remains of humanity, forced into its last stand by countless alien races, the St. Mercer Plateau, before the Cloudtop Oasis was established. Scholars' long research has revealed that they are the remains of the prehistoric Night Crown City. However, Night Crown City has been reduced to ruins, so this is a ruined ruin. Alright, don't just stand there. Hurry and complete the registration to enter the city. When Hogmitz and Liu Ming emerged from the officer's duty room, they held a piece of paper in their hands, the identity information of the adventurers in the night forest. Printed in the upper left corner of the page were several symbols representing numbers, likely the language of this world. According to the officer, Liu Ming had thus become the 8,963rd temporary resident of the night fortress. Of course, these were the 8,963 living residents, excluding those unfortunate ones who had already died. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 224 Commission Hall, Title Metal. Entering the Fortress of Night, the two men felt at ease. After all, these towering walls and well-trained garrisons symbolized security. Furthermore, the defenders symbolized peak military prowess. Liu Ming surveyed this exotic military fortress with curiosity. The Fortress of Night was dominated by black and grey. Even the shops along the street were constructed of black and grey stone. They were generally low, no more than 2 stories high. They were sparsely populated, not tightly packed, which seemed to effectively prevent large-scale intensive destruction. Hogmitz soon led Liu Ming to Osei and the others, who had already disposed of their gains. They then arrived at the residential area, or 3-story, sizable black building. It was also the headquarters of the Warframe Squad. Liu Ming quickly met the remaining members of the Warframe Squad who remained at the headquarters. Not one of them is weaker than me, Liu Ming thought to himself, sensing each powerful aura. Welcome, newcomer. This is good. The Warframe Squad's professional medic. He's far more professional than Lund. This is Pharaoh, the Warframe Squad scout. He's the fastest of us, even faster than me. Liu Ming glanced at Pharaoh curiously. Even Osei had said he was the fastest. Pharaoh was a long-legged, long-armed young man clad in leather armor, 2 rapiers slung from his waist. His sparse stubble and deep eyes gave him a mature and charming look. This is Marsha, one of the 3 female members of our team, and also our gourmet chef and cook. After a sumptuous dinner, Liu Ming arrived at an empty bedroom on the 2nd floor. It had been the bedroom of a former Warframe squad member. That unfortunate soul had already perished, so now it was his turn. Lying on his uncomfortable bed, Liu Ming's thoughts raced. This world was dangerous, in some ways, no less dangerous than Earth. And his location was one of its most dangerous. The Night Forest Forward Base's duties not only provide a temporary resting place for adventurers and hunters exploring and carrying out missions within the Night Forest, but its more important duty is to obey the orders of the Scholar's Tower in Jinnah City, the overlord city of Jerry Town. As a watchtower for the Night Crown ancient ruins, it observes every move within the ruins and promptly reports back to the Scholar's Tower in Jinnah City via messenger falcons. Scholar organizations are also divided into different levels. The lowest level is a Scholar's Castle like Jerry Town, the next level up is the Scholar's Tower, and the next level up is the Soul Holy Tower, humanity's eternal spiritual guide and leader. However, even the lowest level of Scholar's Castle is a daunting task for a high-ranking knight. Despite the dangers of the Night Crown ancient ruins, few high-ranking knights would dare disobey the orders from the Scholar's Tower to defend the ancient ruins. However, despite the danger, the difficulty is proportional to the reward. Among the defenders of the numerous forward bases under Jerry City, Wolfsword Cuman, the guardian of the Night Forest, is arguably the fastest growing. He has even surpassed the once powerful Cuman twin swords. Without the support of the Scholar's Tower, no one would have believed this. In just 10 years, he's risen from an ordinary high-ranking knight to one of the strongest high-ranking knights in Jerry City, second only to the Grand Knight and several top knights. However, a secret revelation had Liu Ming ecstatic, but upon learning the details, his enthusiasm was dampened. The story goes that within the Night Crown ruins, behind the Night Wall, Kelwell, once the strongest knight in Jerry City, and his wife, Storm Hunter Samai, disappeared. It's said they entered the desolate ruins to search for a rare artifact that could enhance their only daughter's spiritual potential. This spiritual potential is essential for becoming a scholar. That event resonated throughout the main city of Jinnah and several of its subordinate towns. An expedition to the Night Crown ruins, led by an occultist, and joined by over 10 Grand Knights, Grand Hunters, and Grand Knights, and no fewer than 50 top-tier transcendents, ultimately ended in disastrous failure. One of the chief scholars of the Scholar's Tower in Jinnah's main city, the occultist, and no less than 1/3 of the team members disappeared. Disappearance in ancient ruins usually signifies death, especially in this case, where those missing or deceased were at least top-tier transcendents. Among them were Grand Knight Kuel, the owner of the Half-Mountain Manor, and his mistress, Samigui. Damn it. Upon learning the full story, Liu Ming couldn't help but feel annoyed. Although he had never seen a Grand Knight in action, judging by his current assessment of the mid-level knight's strength, there were senior knights, top knights, and finally Grand Knights. Given the range between these levels, each level being equivalent to the 3 sub-levels of a professional, a Grand Knight would be at least a level 2s rank, and perhaps even exceeding level 3. His peak was level 3, and he was a level 3 beast tamer, aided by external artifacts. Now, he was even a level 1 C rank, without even a single dragon pet. Under these circumstances, entering the ruins would be a near miss. Just as he was feeling melancholy, a blood beast resembling a half-grown dog ran over and nipped at the hem of Liu Ming's pants. Only then did Liu Ming see the blood-colored creature before him. It was a blood beast summoned from a clouded leopard-like decaying beast during the final stage of his journey through the Night Forest. Small in size, it was agile and ferocious. Because bloodliners were rare, Liu Ming feared causing unnecessary disturbances if he brought his summoned servants into the city with him. So, following Alce's suggestion, Liu Ming stored all the blood beasts outside the city walls. He only brought this one blood beast, which was about the same size as a normal battle pet, and had a normal appearance. No, he wasn't alone. He had several more blood beasts. But it wasn't enough. Far from enough. His strongest blood beast was only level B, the equivalent of a seasoned junior transcendent, roughly on par with the core members of the Warframe squad. Even Wolf Sword Cuman, the Warframe squad superior, dared not set foot in the impenetrable Night Crown ruins. This was especially true for these hunters, who were still a long way from achieving high-level transcendent status. If they could find those who had survived to learn about the ruins, they might be able to prepare for the exploration. However, those who joined the expedition were at least top-tier transcendents. Cuman might not be convinced by them, let alone a mere transcendent who had only demonstrated the abilities of a full-fledged hunter. At a loss for what to do, Liu Ming decided to visit the commission hall. Osei had said it was a good place. Throughout the forward base, most buildings and functions served hunters, and the commission hall was naturally one of them. While the name suggests a correspondence with commission hunters, it actually served all hunters, even adventurers who hadn't yet become hunters. However, only hunters who had earned the hunter medal could accept missions in the commission hall. Ordinary adventurers only had the right to purchase supplies, exchange goods, and trade goods there. The commission hall was the largest building in the entire Night Fortress, aside from the tutelage. The hall, nearly 1,000 square meters in size, was already packed with at least 100 people. Even though night had fallen, nearly 100 people were still scattered throughout the hall. The heaviest crowds were gathered around the commission hall staff's information desk, the quest wall, and the trading area. Liu Ming wasn't a hunter yet, so he couldn't accept quests, so he naturally avoided the quest wall. He went directly to the trading area. The trading area consisted of dozens of counters, nearly half of which were occupied. Adventurers gathered around each counter, discussing their progress. Bloodhammer, you said this is the intermediate knight training method? I don't believe it, a sturdy knight shouted at someone buying or selling his wares at the counter. The knight's saliva sprayed onto the counter, some even splashing onto the face of the seller. Bloodhammer was also a knight, but he was considerably smaller than the two sturdy knights standing before him, who could fit two of him. But the giant's roar didn't faze him at all. He pulled his crimson hammer from behind the counter, slammed it, and snarled, "Beast, it's not your call. If you don't believe me, get out of here, and don't interfere with my business." HMPH, that's some bullshit intermediate training method. Anyone who buys it is a fool. Seeing Bloodhammer's serious attack, the tall knight muttered, and quickly walked away. Bloodhammer cursed at Beast's retreating form. "Pa, what a thing. It seems I didn't beat you up enough once." Everyone around was accustomed to the drama between the two. Beast and Bloodhammer were both intermediate knights, having passed the commission hunter examination and received the hunter medal in the same batch, but their feud had also been forged during that examination. "This is the training method I got from the Eagle's Nest, Rock Heavy Fist." As he finished speaking, the onlookers erupted in discussion. "Eagle's Nest? Which Eagle's Nest? Which Eagle's Nest are you talking about? Besides the nest of the one-horned eagles, where else in the entire Night Forest is it called an eagle's nest?" It's said that one-horned eagles like to bring their catch back to the eagle's nest to share, and many unfortunate adventurers have been among them. If this training manual truly came from the eagle's nest, it's highly plausible. But it's hard to say whether it's an intermediate training manual. An intermediate training manual can train you all the way to an intermediate knight, so it's very valuable. Bloodhammer saw the people around him talking, most of them expressing doubt, and said coldly, "HMPH. I've tried it myself, and it's definitely an intermediate training manual." Seeing everyone stop questioning and look at him, he continued, "I believe you still remember Watson, the Heavy Rock Knight who disappeared a year ago. This manual is the Heavy Rock Knight's training manual. I even found his Heavy Rock medal in the Eagle's Nest." With that, he pulled a black badge from his bosom. The badge was half the size of a palm, with a clenched fist-shaped rock pattern on the front, surrounded by rough patterns of knife and axe-hewn patterns. On the back is engraved Watson Marshall, which is Chang'an's real name. Chapter 225, Unexpected Shock, Mysterious Map. This medal is a legendary title hunter medal. Just like Bloodhammer, a mid-level knight also possesses a specially crafted Bloodhammer medal awarded by the Hunters Guild. All transcendents who reach the mid-level can apply for title hunter certification. Ultimately, those who successfully pass the certification assessment will be awarded a title corresponding to this title. The Hunters Guild will also award each title hunter a specially crafted, one-of-a-kind medal. No two title hunter medals are exactly alike. This medal symbolizes both personal strength and status within the hunter world. For example, the 3 mid-level transcendents of the Warframe squad, Captain Osi, the Swift Knight, Vice Captain Gemard, the Lightning Hunter, and Swift Shadow Swordsman Hogmitz have all passed the title hunter assessment and become title hunters. One team, 3 title hunters. This is why the Warframe squad holds such a high status within the Night Bastion, even earning the special regard of Night Bastion's guardian, Wolfsword Cuman. Therefore, when Bloodhammer presented the Heavy Rock medal, everyone's eyes lit up, and they largely believed what he said. No one doubted the medal's authenticity. At least, they had never heard of anyone daring to present a fake title medal and defraud others in the Hunter Guild's commission hall. Such a move was sheer self-destruction. The branch director, a foremost among the titled hunters, and the nearly 10 other titled guild hunters stationed at the hall's guard post would surely tear the imposter to shreds. Guild hunters were transcendents affiliated with the Hunter Guild, trained by the guild, and sworn allegiance to it. This provided a powerful safeguard for the Hunter Guild's military strength. Most free hunters without powerful backgrounds wouldn't dare to offend them. With the Heavy Rock medal as proof, it was virtually certain this was the training method Heavy Rock Watson had once used, and everyone was excited. The training method was recorded in a large parchment book, and everyone took turns flipping through a few pages. However, they were limited to 10 breaths of time. Anyone who exceeded the time limit would be immediately stopped by Bloodhammer. This was also to prevent the training method from being leaked and wasting time. Bloodhammer, how are you going to trade the training method? Someone asked after confirming its authenticity. Changayan was a legendary figure within the Dark Fortress, renowned for his astonishing defensive prowess. His defining battle was against a team of 30 or 40 hunters, led by 2 titled hunters. He single-handedly fought against dozens of them, ultimately surviving without significant injury, while the team suffered heavy losses. Afterward, some even hailed him as the most defensive transcendent in the entire Dark Fortress. Consequently, many became interested in the training method of this supreme defender. Wilderness exploration is a life-or-death struggle, where survival is paramount. Therefore, defensive night training methods have long been in high demand within the forward base. 1 price. 40,000 Azure coins. Bloodhammer said calmly. Crazy. That Bloodhammer guy is so bold. Last year's high-level training manual only fetched 50,000, and he's selling an intermediate level training manual for nearly that price. Possessing an intermediate training manual doesn't guarantee you'll reach the level of an intermediate knight. 40,000 is totally worthless. Everyone was in uproar, saying the price was too high and no one would buy it. Bloodhammer sneered. Humph. That high-level training manual sold for 100,000 because it was incomplete. Mine isn't incomplete. It contains 4 levels of bloodline training, from Quasi Knight, Full Knight, Junior Knight, and Intermediate Knight, all the way to complete secret techniques. And this isn't just any intermediate level training manual. Have you forgotten Changayan Watson's secret techniques? His words reminded everyone of Changayan Watson's signature skills, the man stronger than a bear. When he roared in battle, it became a nightmare for his enemies. His muscles instantly became as solid as rock, making most sharp weapons impervious to his flesh. It's said that even a piercing rapier would be trapped by his incredibly strong muscles, preventing it from advancing any further. As for ordinary blunt instruments, even his skin, tougher than cowhide, couldn't be cut. He was truly unbreakable, a rock of immortality. But at the thought of the price, everyone shook their heads. Too expensive. While the secret technique is powerful, it's not invincible. Wasn't Watson known as the Rock of Immortality? He's still dead. Let's go. Let's see the fun is over. More and more people were watching the spectacle. Some would-be buyers suggested we'd consider a lower price. Bloodhammer shook his head like a rattle and flatly refused. No need to even think about it. 40,000, not a single Azure coin less. Upon hearing this, the crowd gradually dispersed. This was something Bloodhammer hadn't anticipated. He'd expected anyone to be interested in this training method. Poor bastards. You don't know what you're talking about. I'd rather keep it for myself than sell it to you at such a low price. Bloodhammer felt a little annoyed. His efforts today had been in vain, and he'd even been provoked by the beast in vain. As Liu Ming watched the crowd disperse, Bloodhammer began packing up, preparing to give up on the sale. Seeing his chance, he quickly stepped forward, pointed at the leather book, then at himself, asking if he could take a look. Bloodhammer noticed the musket behind Liu Ming's back, frowned, but nodded. Go ahead, take a look. But you don't look like you can afford it. I'll call it a day after you've seen it. Liu Ming had come to take a look out of curiosity. The seller agreed, and he began to flip through the book, but as he did, he was struck by a shock. His shock only deepened as he flipped through the pages. Although he didn't recognize any of the words on the scroll, at least half of the leather book was filled with patterns. These patterns were composed of countless intricate lines of varying thickness and length, seemingly chaotic yet hinting at a mysterious pattern. In the center of most patterns, a cracked heart-shaped pattern, like a heart of stone, was evident. This pattern must be the core of all the patterns, because almost all the lines revolve around this core, or extend from this rock pattern. If the lines in these patterns describe the human body's meridians, then this rock pattern is located in the left side of the chest. That's the location of the heart, the source of strength and vitality. After reading a few pages, the patterns I saw were filled with an indestructible sense of primal power and heaviness. Each pattern was independent of the others, yet vaguely connected. To Liu Ming, these obscure patterns were clearly maps of the evolution of somatic energy, containing extremely profound content. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.